you will enjoy today's proceedings with us. Before I go any further, we need to declare this venue as a precinct of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. So let me firstly do that. In terms of Rule 56.1 and Rule 56.1.2, which states as follows: the legislature or a committee of the legislature may hold meetings outside of the ordinary precinct of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. And 2, the speaker or a chairperson of a committee holding a meeting outside the precinct of the legislature must declare the area as a precinct of the legislature for the duration of the meeting. Now, we are here in the Refilwe Community Centre here in Cullinan, and I therefore wish to declare that this community hall in which we are in at the moment, I wish to declare it as a part of the precinct of the legislature, and all rules of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature apply. Thank you very much. Having done that, therefore, once again, I wish to welcome all the members of the Portfolio Committee that are here. Welcome to you, members. Also to the committee support staff, welcome to all of you. I'd also like to welcome the delegation that is here from the National Department of Transport, and at this stage is being led by Mr. Simelane. There are other colleagues who are on their way here. I would also, in absentia, like to welcome the provincial delegation from the Provincial Department of Transport and Logistics. At this stage, we are joined by members of the Office of the HOD, and when the leader of the delegation gets here, we'll welcome him formally. I have not been given a list of councillors, etc., that are here present. I've not been given a list of councillors, but if there are councillors here, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you, and I hope that the committee support team will give us that list, because we'd like to acknowledge them in person. May I also extend a welcome to all of you that have joined us here at this stage. Welcome, and I'm sure others will join us that are on their way. And as I've said, we are on YouTube and Facebook Live, and to those of you who have joined via YouTube and Facebook, once again a warm welcome to you. We're starting a few minutes late, but we will catch up time. Maybe just to also say that it's good to be here in Cullinan, which forms part of Tshwane here in Gauteng. As a committee, we've not been here before, so it's good to be here. And we trust that all of you that are both here with us and on the virtual platforms will find these public hearings of benefit to you. So as I move on to the real reason why we are here, we have 3 bills that have been referred to the committee by the National Council of Provinces. Those 3 bills are the following: the Economic Regulation of Transport Bill, the National Road Traffic Amendment Bill, and the National Land Transport Amendment Bill. These are bills that fall under the National Department of Transport. One is a new bill, 2 are amendment bills, and they've been dealt with in the National Assembly. Were referred then to the National Council of Provinces, and the National Council of Provinces has in turn referred those through to the 9 provinces, where the respective portfolio committees dealing with transport in the 9 provinces are currently busy across the country with public hearings, and that's what we're doing here in Gauteng. So this is not a normal committee meeting. It's specifically dealing with these three bills. And that's the purpose of today. I'm not going to talk about what each bill is about because we'll be getting a presentation on each bill. And the way we'll run today's meeting is that each bill will be presented, and after that bill has been presented, we'll open up to those of you that are here with us for any questions of clarity, any inputs that you wish to make, and then we'll go on to the next bill and do the same. Maybe also to indicate before I go any further, we have an interpretation service. There are interpreters at the back of the hall. If you would like to get a headphone like this, it's this here. If you have not got one of these and you would want one of these so that you can listen to the proceedings in the language of your choice, you can please raise your hand so that they can bring them to you. Let me just indicate to you, keep your hands up and the team will distribute them to you. Please keep your hand up. If you want, please keep your hand up. The team will bring them to you. The languages that we have as part of the interpretation service today, it's English on channel 1. Can we just keep the noise down, please? It's English on channel 1, Sepedi and Sesotho on channel 5, isiZulu and isiNdebele on channel 4. There's Afrikaans, I understand, on channel 3, and Xitsonga and Tshivenda on channel 2. So those are the channels that we have. Please keep your hands up. They will bring the headphones to you. And also please remember, when you leave, these headphones and this gadget here must remain. You must hand them back. Please don't take them home with you. Otherwise, they will not have sufficient when they go to the next committee meeting for interpretation services. Please, could we keep the noise levels down? All right. So while they are giving those out, we are going to continue. And what we will do now is we are going to move on to the first presentation. That is the presentation on the National Land Transport Amendment Bill, and that's going to be presented by Mr. Simelane. Before I hand over to you, sir, I see there are still people with hands up that need the headphones and the gadgets for interpretation. Please, can we get those handed out quickly? I don't want us to start until everybody's got their headphones for the interpretation. Can the team please hand them out quickly? Let's just give it a minute or two, and then I'll hand over to you, Mr. Simelane. Let me welcome all other members who've arrived to join us. Welcome, members. Let's just give it a minute for everybody to get their headphones. I see there's still two hands. There's some hands here on this side. If you can please move with speed, I want to start. We're behind. One more hand right here in front, please, if we can help there. Okay, we need to start. with the bills. I'm going to firstly let me welcome Mr. Simelane from the National Department of Transport. It's good to have you with us, and we trust that you will also find it being of benefit here once we listen to the inputs. But let me hand over to you to take us through the first presentation, and that's dealing with the National Land Transport Amendment Bill. I'm going to ask, can I please ask that we keep the noise levels down, because what it does, it gets in onto the microphones that are picking up sound for the YouTube and Facebook, and it can make it a bit difficult for people to hear. So let's keep the noise levels down. Mr. Simelane, let me hand over to you. I hope the team is flighting your presentation. There it is. Could we please put that presentation onto slideshow mode so that we can all see it? Can we just enlarge the presentation on the screen, please? There we are. That's great. Mr. Simelane, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to honorable members, our officials from the various departments that are here, the community of Cullinan. Thank you for the opportunity. Again, we've been moving around the country, everywhere in the province, for these meetings to take these bills through our community, just to alert them what government is trying to do in improving its services to the country, particularly in transport, to the moving South Africans or our traveling public. So I'm presenting the National Land Transport Amendment Bill. Largely, this bill, it's informed by the National Land Transport Act of 2009. It largely deals with matters of public transport and planning within a municipal environment. So this bill, fortunately for here, my task, it's a written bill that had already been through to Parliament, and it's been through our communities already. So there was just a particular matter that the presidency wanted the national department through Parliament, the national department just to correct on this bill. So it was referred back then to Parliament, so that then the department, through Parliament, can then do those necessary corrections in this bill. So it deals with only clause 7 that the presidency requested the department to re-look into that matter, so that then we correct it and align it carefully with the constitution of the country, because everything, all sectors need to align themselves with the constitution of the country. So this bill, it deals with matters. The new matter that is in the bill is the issue of the e-hailing services, the service that you as the public is using when your children or your sisters or your moms at home, they're saying, request for me a vehicle to come and pick me up at home. That is the service as well that this bill is trying to make provision for in terms of legislation, because all other services, they are regulated under this act, the National Land Transport Act. So the e-hailing service, it started just after 2009, around 2010-11, when the act was already passed. So from 2010 upwards until 2016, we ran an amendment bill. Then it went through to the parliamentary process until to the presidency. It came again also to our districts. Then, as I've said before, that then the president just brought it back to say there's just one clause, which is clause 7, on matters of powers and function between spheres of government to do the contracting arrangement. Contracting in terms of minibus taxi or buses, as to which rightful authority has got power to do that service, or which sphere is responsible for what in its jurisdiction. So yes, then I was saying the main issue that is there on this bill is the issue of the e-hailing, which is new. Other issues are just amendments and correcting the act here and there. But mainly also on the minibus taxi types, there was a limitation about a 20% clause to say if you want to run a minibus taxi type service, if you are using a vehicle, a motor car, you cannot replace a vehicle by more than 20%, which means don't buy a vehicle that is bigger than more than 2 passengers. But then the industry, our minibus taxi types industry service operators, they then came to government, they gave us input that the 20% is hamstringing, is frustrating their business. When they want to grow, maybe an operator was doing a minibus taxi service, maybe with a small car, a sedan. So now you want to buy a minibus taxi, or he wants to buy a midibus taxi, which is maximum is 34. But the popular one in our community is the 22-seater, which the industry largely use for long distances. So then we then said, okay, we agreed with the industry. Then this bill is removing also that 20% to say if you're an operator, you want to move from a car to a minibus or a midibus taxi, you can replace your vehicle without any problem. So that is also on this bill. So then on the issue of clause 7, it's just a matter of correcting now, or to say the powers of contracting in a jurisdiction of a municipality belongs to a municipality originally. That's what the Constitution says. So what this bill was trying to do, since 2009, those powers and functions were with the municipalities already. The policy position was that functions need to be consolidated at the rightful places where they belong, such that the municipality, because at a local authority level, that is where all of us are saved. We get our services from there. Also to move our people within a municipality, since they are responsible for planning, let them be empowered as well and be able to do contracting arrangements within their jurisdiction. However, since there was a challenge of capacity gaps in certain areas of the municipality, then this bill was seeking then to give, to a certain extent, those same powers to a province and also to national. However, then the presidency has corrected us to say we don't have to do that. We must respect each and every jurisdiction of each sphere. These powers are originally municipal function powers. We must not now take them back into province or national. Province and national, they already have powers in the Constitution for them to intervene in certain areas of a municipality if the need arises. Or also in another way, should a province seek to enter into that space where there are gaps in a municipality, then they need to apply Section 12 in the National Land Transport Act, which is agreement that spheres of our government are allowed to enter into, so that each sphere agree that certain sphere can take a function of another sphere, or they do it in agreement with each other. So that's what we're being cautioned to say we need to respect jurisdictions. Each sphere has got a constitutional jurisdiction that has been given. So the other upper sphere, they need to be careful how they intervene within the municipal space. they must do it in consideration, in respect that there is a sphere that has got full right and authority to run its function at that jurisdiction. So we had put in this bill that certain municipalities will then have to qualify through a criteria and requirement. That's what the presidency questioned us about. And then we said other cities like the metros, they can be a right to the minister for an exemption, that they get exemption from requirement. So all that as well were questioned also about, to say we need not to do that because these are original municipal functions. Let us leave them where they belong within a municipal sphere. So then we removed all those impediments in this bill to then restore the original functions of the municipalities without any hindrances or any conditions in that regard. So then that's what we have done, Chairperson, through the Portfolio Committee on Transport and also through NCOP process, which is continuing now, going to each province and also in each district of the provinces. So this is where we are with this bill. So our hope is that this process can just be completed so that this bill can quickly go back to Parliament and to the presidency so that it can be signed speedily, so that those functions, provisions that are there, then they can start to be put into effect when the president signed this bill into law. So that's about it with this bill, Chair. There is nothing much to share to the community, so that's what we have done. It was a matter of restoring the powers back to where they belong, into the local sphere of government. That is the power to enter into contracting arrangements with minibus taxi type service or with the buses in our respective areas. Thank you, Chair. I think I can stop there and then I'll wait for questions.
Super. Thank you very much, Mr. Simelane. I think as you've explained, this particular amendment bill is quite straightforward. As you were saying, there's not a lot that new that's coming out here. But nevertheless, thank you for the presentation. To those of you that are here with us in the community hall, I'm going to open up and check if there's anybody that would want to make any input or any questions on this particular bill. I'm going to open up. Can I check if there's anybody that would like to ask any questions to the department on this particular amendment bill, or there may be something that you would want more, they need to give more information on. You may want to make a particular input on this particular amendment bill. Let me check. Are there any hands on this bill? I don't see any hands from anybody. So I take it we all understood what's being presented. Let me check again. Going 1, going 2, going 3. All right. I think that was, you were very clear in what you presented, Mr. Simelane. There's no questions that anybody wants to ask. So thank you very much. Where is Tembiso? I want to check. Mr. Simelane, are your colleagues here yet? Because I want to move on to the next bill. And this is the challenge that you have when the presenters are still on their way. I think what we will have to do, and to those of you who are on Facebook and YouTube, and to those, everybody here, we are dependent on the officials that are supposed to be here to present. They were supposed to be here at 10 o'clock. Stembiso, where are you? From Lani? Can we find Stembiso? I suggest what we do, let's make contact with those officials wherever they are. They must pull off the road maybe and present through their cell phones, because we can't delay these hearings. Can we try and find out where they are? We can link them up via the Teams link. I think there is a link, and we can get them linked up, and they must present from wherever they are. Because it's going to delay us if we are not able to proceed. I'm asking you to bear with us, because the officials that are presenting are not from the province, they're not from us here. We are dependent on them to be here. So what I'm going to suggest, let's just take a 2-3 minute break so we can find out where they are and then determine what do we do. Let's just take about a 3-4 minute break. Thank you very much. where the officials are and how we can get them to present from where they are. So just please bear with us. It's slightly beyond our control and we wish to apologize. Thank you. give an update. The officials that are to be presenting are, I think they've arrived or they're just outside. So let's just give it a few minutes. We wanted to present it ourselves, but in terms of the proceedings, we're not allowed to do that ourselves. It has to be the departmental officials. I want to apologize again. It's beyond our control, but I'm told they are here. They have arrived and will be coming into the venue shortly. So once again, our sincere apologies, but I'm sure they'll apologize as well when they come in. So just bear with us. I know that they are arranging coffee and that for everybody, and as soon as that is ready, and perhaps after the next bill, we'll try and see how do we break for a few minutes. But just give us a minute or two so we can sort out who's arrived and so that they can present. But please accept our apologies once again. And to those of you who are on Facebook and YouTube, our sincere apologies again. But we're having to wait for the designated officials that have to present. And as I say, in terms of the manner in which public hearings are held, ourselves as members of the Portfolio Committee can't present these bills. It's not the procedure. So just give us a minute or two. Thank you. Some delays with traffic on the way, but we are glad that you're here with us. Mr. Chikamvi will be regulation. It's not an amendment bill. It's a new bill. So when he takes us through that, listen carefully, because there's a number of things that are going to change in the way in regulation that are coming in. So, Mr. Chikamvi, over to you, and I hope the team is flighting the bill. Over to you, sir.
Good morning to Honorable Chair, Honorable members, members of the public. My name is Alan Chikamvi, and I'm from the National Department of Transport, responsible for a project called Single Transport Economic Regulator, which is an Single Transport Economic Regulator, which is going to be an entity once the bill is enacted. That is called a STER, which includes the Transport Economic Regulator, as well as the Transport Economic Council. So I'll be taking you through the ERT bill, which is the Economic Regulation of Transport bill, which is the bill that is intending to establish an entity which is called STER. So basically my presentation outline will be as follows. I'll take you through what economic regulation is, why do we need this single transport economic regulator, and I'm also going to take you through the economic regulation of transport bill components together with the anticipated funding model for the institution. Basically, I'll start by saying, what is economic regulation? One will then wonder why we're talking about this economic regulation. What does it deal with? So within the transport sector, economic regulation refers to control which ensures that we have a safe and a reliable transport system at a fair tariff and agreed minimum service of standards available throughout the country. So its objectives are to ensure that services provided to consumers are effective, efficient, sustainable, and meets consumer needs through consumer protection, service quality regulation, price regulation, as well as competition regulation. So its significant impact within the transport sector is that we will then have, by introducing economic regulation, we will then have a better pricing, improved service levels for major pieces of transport infrastructure and services, an independent appeals body to deal with problems on that respective infrastructure or the service which is being provided. And there will be also a specialized body to help design and oversee concession agreements. The regulator may then be in a position to can engage with the transport sector and the provincial and municipal authorities with regards to the provision of technical assistance and expertise within economic regulation. It will also have to deal with issues of cooperative activities to detect and suppress prohibited conduct or offenses. Why do we then need the single transport economic regulator? When we did our research studies, such as the benchmark studies, the options analysis reports, together with the status quo analysis, the findings of those researches suggested that there is a need to have an efficient and cost effectiveness within the transport sector in South Africa. And when we do international comparisons, we then realize that the logistics costs are acceptably high. They were sitting at average was 55% as compared to the rest of the world, which is sitting at 35%. So therefore, we then saw that there is a need for us to then introduce economic regulation within the transport sector. And in order to address issues such as that, one of the reasons why we have these inefficiencies and cost ineffectiveness within the transport sector is because of currently there is a conflict of interest where you find that there is a state-owned entity which has been given monopoly powers. For an example, we have got transport ports, TNPA, which is Transnational Ports Authority, and there's skills and lack of capacity in the economic regulation. This is a challenge throughout the world. When we're conducting our benchmarking exercises, we realize that there's countries such as your Rwanda, your Netherlands, which do have a multi-sectoral regulator. It's a multi-sector regulator where you find that one institution is regulating issues of water, they are regulating electricity, they are regulating transport, etc. And while as when you look at an institution which is in Canada, which is called the Transport Canada, it specializes in regulating transport, the transport sector within Canada. So due to the fact that there's lack of skills and capacity within the economic regulation space, we then adopted the model which Canada is currently using so that we can then have shared resources and expertise under one roof. And then currently there's also absence of clear appeals processes for regulated entities. On this one, for an example, when you look in the aviation space, we do have a regulating committee that is responsible for determining or approving fares which are charged by Airports Company of South Africa and Air Transport Navigational Services within South Africa. So basically what they then do there is that they only determine those fees which they are charging to the respective entities. But however, there isn't any appeals mechanism in place in case the regulated entities are not happy with the fees that has been determined by the regulating committee. So therefore, there's a need for us to then introduce an independent body that will deal with appeals mechanism within the transport sector. And also, lastly, economic regulation in the transport sector is currently fragmented, inconsistent, and in some cases non-existent. An example of where economic regulation is not existent is where you will find in the rail space, for an example. There isn't any economic regulation at the current moment. And as we all know that we are introducing third-party access into the rail services, rail infrastructure. So this institution which we are intending to create will then be able to mediate to say as to should Transnet Freight Rail, for an example, refuse to grant you access, then it will then have to intervene and conduct researches to determine whether there is available capacity within the respective network, etc., etc. And then I will then, another example that I can give you an overall example, for instance, currently within the transport sector, I'll talk about the taxi industry. Within the taxi industry, we have a serious problem whereby you find that when fuel prices increases, taxi fare also increases. And once the fuel prices decreases, taxi fare doesn't increase. But once fuel increases again, then the price will then go up again. So it's a problem which we are currently facing. So by introducing this entity, the bill then allows the minister to then determine whether he can include the taxi industry under regulation, provided if they meet respective if they meet issues which are currently stipulated within the ERT bill, which I'll take you through at a later stage. But however, the entity will then be in a position to try and mediate for people so that people can benefit, to ensure that you are paying a fair price when you're utilizing your taxis or buses, for example. Then why do we then need this tier again? Like I've indicated earlier on, to say by introducing STAIR, we will then be improving and expanding our regulatory frameworks by establishing an independent complaints and appeals mechanism for almost, strengthening the independence of existing regulators, creating sufficient and dedicated regulatory expertise, developing rigorous and consistent methodology and procedures, and we will then be expanding the framework by addressing potential conflict of interest, introducing regulatory oversight across all modes and the rail sector specifically, deepening oversight across key aspects of the transport value chain. Then one would then say, why are you creating STAIR if there isn't any policy which is emphasizing on the need to develop such an entity? Well, to respond to that, STAIR is informed by a number of policy documents, such as the National Development Plan 2030. The other one is White Paper on National Transport Policy 2021, the MTSF Action Plan, and also STAIR forms part of the economic reforms and stimulus package of South Africa, and it will help to realize the goals of Operation Vulindlela. Then I'll then take you through the components of the ERT bill. Basically, the ERT bill consists of 6 chapters, and these chapters are divided into 2, which is government matters as well as substance matters. By government matters, we are referring to matters that deals with the institutional and legal design of the regulatory system and framework within which decisions are made, the establishment of regulatory independence, the appointment of the regulator, and the handling of disputes and appeals. While as on the other hand, when you're talking of issues of matters related to substance, then the bill will then deal with issues such as content of regulation, how actually decisions, whether implicit or explicit, are made specifically, where a regulatory entity or other entities within government, along with the rationale for decision, choice of pricing methodology and scope, licensing requirements and licensee obligation, etc. As you can see on this table, Honorable Chair, like I've indicated that the bill consists of 6 chapters. For the sake of time, I'll then have to skip. I think it's something which someone can then look at while when they have spare time. Then I'll then take you through the objectives of the bill. The bill aims to address establishment of the Transport Economic Regulator and the Transport Economic Council. And when we're talking about the Transport Economic Regulator, we're referring to it's an entity that will be a primary technical administrative enforcement regulator responsible for carrying out education, research, price control, price approvals, access request approval, investigation of complaints, and enforcement. The powers will then be vested within a body which is called the Executive Regulatory Panel, which is established by by clause 34 of the ERT bill, which will comprise of the Chief Executive Officer and Executive Officer. And TER will consist of a board. The board of the regulator will be fully only on a governance and oversight role of the regulator. And one of the key issues, in order to allow independence from to avoid conflict of interest from the political heads who's responsible for appointing the board is not going to be involved in a day-to-day decision-making of the regulator, but however, they'll deal with issues of governance on a day-to-day. And by establishing the Transport Economic Council, this will be an institution which is set up parallel to the Transport Economic Regulator. However, it is independent from.
Sorry to interrupt. Can the team that's doing the flighting of the slides seems to have got stuck on the objectives of the bill, and I'm worried that we might not be able to follow. Are you controlling it?
Okay.
Okay, super, thanks. If we can just get it to the slide you're talking on, so that everybody can follow what you are discussing. Thanks so much.
No, I was talking to this slide. My apologies, Honorable Chair. I was talking through this slide, which shows you how how the institution would look like. As you can see, both the institutions, which is the Transport Economic Regulator as well as the Transport Economic Council, are responsible to the minister. But however, as you can see on my left, TER then consists of the regulatory board together with the Executive Regulatory Panel, which consists of the CEO together with other executive officers, which then form the members of the regulatory panel. Then I was then now explaining on what TEC and what is its role and what does it intends to achieve. I was indicating to the fact that TEC is an independent body from TER, because TEC will be primarily responsible for reviewing the decisions that have been made by the Transport Economic Regulator. So basically, it serves as a tribunal or an appeals body. So should one be aggrieved by the decision that have been made by the Transport Economic Council, then he has to take the matter further to the judiciary system. So I think I'm done with this slide. Then I'll then take you through section 4 of the ERT bill, which is one of the key chapters within the ERT bill, that talks to who then is going to be regulated once the bill is enacted, or what are the conditions which are required for one to then fall under the application of this act. So basically, clause 4, it establishes the framework for the economic regulation of transport and defines the scope of the bill. What it states then in section 141, it states that all markets, entities, facilities, or services in the transport sector which were subject to regulation will be, in terms of this legislation, will continue to be regulated once the bill is enacted. But however, should there be a need to add other public organizations or private-owned entities. The bill then empowers the minister to also bring other private or public entities to fall under the application of this act. The minister can only do this once he has determined whether a single firm controls more than 70% of the market, or he has determined that the preconditions for efficiency and cost effectiveness do not exist within the respective market facility or entity. Then, by doing so, the minister must have found that when you're talking about the 70% market share, this then, the 70% is intended to automatically include the entity under the provision, under the application of the ERT Act, due to the fact that it will be a super dominant entity within a respective market. And then once the minister has determined that the conditions, the preconditions for efficiency and cost effectiveness do not exist within a respective market facility or entity, he then needs to have at least identified, found that one entity or firm has market power, or the facility or resources is an essential facility. And after having considered an opinion from the Competitions Commission, the Competitions Tribunal findings of anti-competitive abuse, as well as the reports from the market inquiry that has been conducted by the regulator. And to add onto this, that the minister does not only determine who will then be added to fall under the application of this act, but however he can also exempt an entity, facility, or market, provided that those entities have made applications, and the minister has seen that the reasons that they are proposing for them to be exempted have got no competition impact to the rest of the market or facility or the rest of the economy. Then I'll then take you to the slide that talks to price determination for the regulated entities. So basically what we did is we realized that transport sector is vast, where you see when you are setting prices, for example, for the fares which the taxis are charging members of the public in utilizing their services, or the fees which is charged by where ports users there is a specific fee which they are currently charged, which they need to pay for using the infrastructure within the post system. So what we then realize is that when you're setting those price methodologies, they are vast. Therefore, the bill then is designed in such a way that it caters for all modes, addressing respective technicalities which are embedded within the price methodology, which prices or tariffs or fees for a respective sector. So basically what it then means, how does the bill then caters for such? Basically the bill requires the regulating entities to prepare and submit a request for a price control to the regulator for the facilities or services which they offer. And then after they've done so, the price control may comprise of a schedule of tariff, charges, fees, tolls, or revenue cap, a limit on the rate of return, or a combination of the above methods. So what it then means then, once the regulated entities has submitted this to the regulator, the submission that the proposal that they've made needs to have what we call a service standards agreement, which they'll be saying by us requesting for this, for 20% increase within our tariffs or charges. This is the service standards which we are likely to meet within, let's say, for example, the next 5 years or the next 3 years, depending on how is the respective tariff going to be reviewed. So after doing so, then the regulator may then determine or adjust the price control as requested by the regulated entity, with or without conditions. So factors which are then used to determine the price control include operating efficiency, need for investment and security of supply in the market, opportunity cost of capital, likely effects on the economy, employment, consumers, or SMEs. So what it means then on this last factor, for an example, in determining the price control, it means, for instance, when we look for, let me give an example with subsidized buses in this case. The regulator needs to then engage with the respective subsidy provider to the respective subsidized buses. Before determining such, he needs to then look at issues such as the opportunity cost of capital. Is that entity going to make profit in a long run? And are they going to sustain the service standards which they were continuously offering to members of the public? So those are some of the factors which the regulator needs to look into before they can then say, we are just going to reduce your prices because your price is ridiculously high. Then those are the factors which the regulator, other technicalities which the regulator goes into in determining whether they should reduce prices for a subsidized entity. Because a subsidized entity in nature, it then means that they are being subsidized because of they are likely not to make or meet the profits which allows them to continuously offer the services. Therefore, the economic regulation one of its intent is not to disturb what is currently functioning well. However,
Sorry to interrupt. Sorry, there's some people just making some noise in the front here. May I please ask that, no, hold on. May I please ask that we keep the noise levels down. If there's a problem, put your hand up. I'll get somebody to come and attend to you to try and help with the problem. But I really want to ask, please don't disrupt for everybody else. It's even making it difficult for us to hear here. I'm going to ask you to continue. From Lani, can you just come and help here, gentleman in front? Let's just see how do we assist. Thank you very much, but please continue. Sorry to have interrupted.
No, talk to me. Talk to him.
Please proceed. Thanks.
okay.
No, please, can I ask that not everybody starts to talk? We will deal with the issue. Please continue, sir. Sorry to have interrupted you on your presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So, by introducing economic regulation, we're not going to regulate entities which we're not going to regulate entities which are currently providing services to members of the public in a manner that is efficiently so. So I'll then take you through. I've spoken already to this slide, which talks to access to rail infrastructure, which is chapter 2 of the ERT bill. Basically, what it then talks to, I'll just summarize this one, Honorable Chair, for the sake of time. It then says, should one seek to be granted access to rail infrastructure, he then needs to first approach, for example, Transnet Freight Rail. With the case of Gautrain, I think Gautrain is the only. It's sitting on a different market as compared to the normal rail infrastructure which we are currently having within South Africa, because it's only in Gauteng and it's not nationally at the moment. So these are some of the entities which are likely to be exempted when the bill is then enacted. But however, with regards to Transnet Freight Rail, within the rail infrastructure, one needs to approach Transnet Freight Rail and seek for access, to be granted access into the rail infrastructure. But should he then, Transnet Freight Rail refuses to grant access to that respective individual, organization or entity, that respective entity, organization or person would then have to approach the regulator to raise a complaint to say, I approached Transnet requesting for access approval, etc., etc. Then in doing so, then the regulator then must then first go and check whether there is available capacity on that respective facility or infrastructure which one is seeking access to. And then once it has done so, they need to also to look at whether that individual or organization are in a position to can finance the infrastructure investments which are embedded within the Transnet plans. Once the regulator has certified that what I've indicated earlier on, then they may grant access to that respective individual, organization, or entity. And then the other thing is that to avoid issues of people or organizations going to seek for access to the rail infrastructure for commercial gains, the bill then further elaborates that they may cede their rights to a third party, but however, a third party may not cede those access rights to any other entity or organization. And then I'll then take you through the powers of support, investigation, complaints against the... So basically the ERT bill then it gives powers to the regulator to conduct investigate any complaint or monitor regulated entities and services and facilities for compliance. And the bill further empowers the regulator to issue a compliance notice to a person or association whom the regulator believes is engaged in a prohibited conduct. It may refer alleged offenses in terms of the Act of National Prosecuting Authority. The regulator may be given substantial powers in support of investigation, including the right to subpoena and the authority to enter into search and under a warrant. So with regards to complaints against regulated entities, any person may file a complaint with the regulator against the regulated entity. With this one, for instance, the one where I elaborated further, where I gave as an example to say, within the taxis industry, the fare which they are charging, one can then, once the regulator is established, one can approach the regulator and say, taxis from Umhlanga to Cullinan, they are costing so much and we believe that this is not a fair price which they are charging. Then the regulator can then consider or investigate that complaint and see as to should they then advise the minister to add that respective taxi market as part of a regulated entity or not. And then if an order or a compliance notice or a price control reduction. So which then means the regulator will then have to approach the taxi industry to say, no guys, because of you are falling under the application of this act and you have conducted prohibited conduct within the charges, within the fares which are charging members of the public, you are requested to reduce the price by 5 rands or by 2 rands, depending on what's the technicality around the tariff, which is the fares which they are charging to the transport, to the taxi users. And then I'll then take you through the portion of the bill where it addresses issues of the acts that have got sections which are going to be repealed by the ERT Act once it is enacted. We have got the National Ports Authority, National Ports Act. Basically, under the National Ports Act, all the functions of the ports regulator will be absorbed by the regulator, basically, which then means that all the current staff of the ports regulator will automatically be transferred to the Transport Economic Regulator. And then we'll also be taking away the function of the regulating committee, which will then be assumed by the regulator, which means that the regulating committee, TER, will then be responsible for determining the fares which the airports company, together with the Air Traffic and Navigational Services Act, empowers the regulating committee to then determine those fees. And then under the National Land Transport Act, the regulator will then assume the function of overseeing the fares charged by the public transport functions and the preconditions of determining the fees, which is embedded in section 28 of the NLTA Act, will also be amended. And then under the South African National Roads Agency Limited and National Roads Act, the regulator will then assume the powers which are currently being conducted by the Minister of determining the toll fees, which SANRAL applies for increment of the toll fees to the Minister. And currently where we are sitting, The minister does not have a dedicated capacity to can advise them to say whether he should approve the proposal that has been made by Sanral to increase the toll fees. So by taking away that function and giving it to the regulator will be in a position to have proper expertise in determining those toll fees. So I'll then take you through the funding of the Transport Economic Regulator as well as the Transport Economic Council. Honorable Chair, from its inception, we can't avoid financing the institution from the fiscus, but however, in a medium term or long term, we're intending that the institution should be self-funding. This then will allow independent financing, which is critical for regulatory independence, and the principles of how the fees to the regulated entities will be set will be in concurrence with the Minister of Finance. The overall amount of money collected should be in line with the needs of the Transport Economic Council and regulator. And it must be in a position whereby it meets the actual cost of regulation. And there's a need to have to make checks and balances to ensure that the regulator is efficient as possible in completing the regulatory tasks, and regulation is only undertaken where it improves economic outcomes. Value for money. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chikamvi. But this bill, it's a complex bill. Some of the matters being referred to here are quite complex. It's not a simple bill. Now, we want to get input. We want to hear from community members and stakeholders who are here with us. I want to ask you to do this for us. Give us some, you started at the beginning. You gave an example about the taxi fares, all right? And you spoke about what happens when the petrol price goes up, the taxi fare goes up. And then you said when the petrol price comes down, the taxi fare stays there. And when the petrol price goes up again, it goes up any further, but it never comes down. Now, what I want you to do, I want you to simplify it. And I want you to explain. That's an example that you used. But can you explain to us then and tell us, here in Cullinan, if community members here in Cullinan are experiencing that, when this bill becomes an act, who do they go to complain? Where do they go to? Because I don't think that's coming through very clearly. And sometimes what happens, we pass bills, but one of the challenges that we have sometimes is that legislation is not used by citizens and residents, because sometimes we don't know where to go or to how to use that legislation. So I want you to expand on that example. And if there's anybody here from the taxi industry, this is not meant to point fingers at the taxi industry, but it's an example that I think everybody can understand. So expand on that and then tell us what you've presented here. If somebody here says, no, I want to approach the regulator, I want to raise a complaint, how do people do that? Because I think if you can explain that and finish that example, then it will give a clear understanding as to when this bill becomes an act, how will it help users of public transport, if I could put that. Can you just expand on that example? Because I'm wanting us to try and simplify this a bit more. I don't know if I'm raising the right things, but I heard some of you agreeing when I was raising the example. So let's go back to you, and then hopefully it enables and sparks some questions and comments, etc. on this bill. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Chair. To respond to where can one go and lodge a complaint regarding prohibited conduct within a respective sector, for example, the taxi industry, which we have alluded as an example. We're anticipating, once the bill is enacted, we're anticipating to be having satellite offices all over the country, where members of the public can then approach those satellite offices to plead or to complain, to lay their complaint against whatever entity within the transport sector. Like I've indicated earlier on, that after you then have laid that complaint, for example, already we know that we are sitting with the current problem of how fares are being charged within the taxi industry. Like what the chairs alluded further to say, once the prices increase, once the fuel is increased, they increase the prices, then they come back again. Once the fuel prices decreases, they don't decrease the prices. But instead what they do is the price remains the same. Then once it's the same, once fuel prices increase again, then they go up again. So it's one of the things which members of the public are going to be empowered to have a place where they can go to lay their complaint to, by establishing this entity which the bill is intending to develop, to introduce into the country. This will be the perfect platform for one to go and lay complaints such as that. And with regards to the regulator then being in a position to then can regulate the taxi industry, because currently the taxi industry is not regulated at the moment. So, like I've indicated earlier on, to say those entities which are currently being regulated within the transport space, once the bill is enacted, they are going to be to continue to be regulated. But however, the bill then gives the minister powers to can then come to and determine whether there is a need for the taxi industry to be regulated or not, given the research that will be conducted by the regulator, the market inquiry, whether the conduct which they are imposing to the end user, which is members of the public, by utilizing their taxis, is not fair, is anti-competitive, then the minister will determine to say, no, taxi industry will now then fall under application of this act. Therefore, should the taxi wants to increase their fares, then they will need to make a proposal to the regulator, and the regulator will look at that proposal to say, okay, due to the fact that tires have increased, fuel has increased, the parts which they are using to service their vehicles has increased, surely indeed there is a need to increase the taxi fare with 5 rands. If not, then this process will be conducted in a transparent manner. Members of the public are also going to be involved in the process through the minister is, according to the ERT bill, then states that the minister needs to gazette that proposal which has been made by the taxi industry to members of the public for inputs. And then once the inputs are received by the regulator also needs to factor in those inputs when they are in the process of now determining whether or not to increase or not to increase that respective fare. So it's quite a lengthy process which the regulator will be embarking on. And should the regulator find that the reasons in which the taxi association or a respective taxi association or the taxi industry is the reasons that they are motivating in the tariff increase or the fare increase on the per respective route is not reasonable enough, then the regulator will not grant that tariff increase. And to elaborate furthermore, let's say the regulator has granted a tariff increment or a fare increment to the taxi association. The bill then allows for the regulator to conduct a review on that increment that they've agreed for the taxi industry to increase the price. They will then look to say, okay, now it's been 6 months, for an example. We have seen that fuel prices have dropped. Therefore, there is a need to then adjust the taxi fare according to the decrement of the fuel prices. Like for instance, for example, if we look at the effects of COVID, the taxi industry did suffer during the COVID time, and the regulator can then also be able to be in a position to go and review to say, because of we've got an economic crisis at the moment, there's this natural disaster which we're facing, state of disaster, there's a need to increase those fares or not. And then the regulator can then increase those fares for a specific time period up until the taxi industry is in a position to can recover and continue to render their services to the public. I think I've responded to that one, Honorable Chair. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. I asked you to just expand because I wanted it to come across very clearly what this bill is about, and when it becomes a law, how does it apply to some of the examples that you were raising, and how can it be used to ensure that commuters using different forms of transport are not exploited in terms of tariffs that are going very high, and then petrol prices, etc., come down. But it's also, this bill is also not just about taxis. It's a whole range of sectors in the transport sector. So it could be about buses as well, where bus companies keep pushing their rates up, and the petrol prices come down, or pushing it too high that residents can't even afford the bus fares anymore. So I think that's also an example. It could be about train fares as well, if I'm not mistaken. So what I want to do now, and that's why I asked you to simplify, because I think we would really want to hear from our stakeholders that are here, just what do they think about some of the things that are being spoken about in this bill, and do they think this bill will be able to help, and will be able to help them make their voices heard when they feel that maybe some of the prices being charged are too high. And I think that's what I think you've check. And I want to just explain something as well. This meeting that we're having here today, and we had another one, we had a similar meeting in Vereeniging 2 weeks ago. We are here talking about legislation and how this proposed legislation, what it's going to do. And one of the things we have to do, and I want to address myself to the gentleman down there, one of the things that we have to do when there's new legislation, we have to go out to communities and use this process to inform communities and stakeholders about a particular piece of legislation, what it's going to do, and we have to, by law, allow stakeholders and community members, not only in Gauteng but throughout the country, must be able to have their say, and must be able to say, look, this is what we think should be included, or yes, we think it's correct, we are happy, but by law, we have to do that. And this is what this process is about. Now, on another day, we will probably come back here, where we will bring the Department of Transport to come and talk about general transport matters. But I wanted to just explain that today we are here because of 3 pieces of legislation, which once we've finished with these public hearings, will eventually become law and become a law in our country. And it's important that we allow community members and stakeholders in different parts of the province and in different parts of the country to get an understanding as to what the legislation is about, what it will mean when it becomes law. Because if we don't allow yourselves and others to express their views, that legislation may be implemented in a way that people are not necessarily happy about. And so this is what this process is about. I thought I must explain that. So I want to check if there is anybody, having listened to what Mr. Chikamvi has explained in terms of the economic regulation of transport bill, that's what it's called. And he went into a lot of detail explaining what this bill is about, and we've given some very clear examples as to how it can actually protect the interest of commuters and other users of transport. And it's not only about taxis, there's a whole range of industries within the transport sector that would fall under this piece of legislation once it becomes law. But we've tried to simplify it. So I want to check with yourselves here if there's anybody who has any questions or comments, or you want to say something about this bill. This is what we are here for. I want to check so that we can allow yourselves to speak, so that whatever inputs you make, when we as a committee have to deal and finalize these bills here in Gauteng, we must take into consideration what stakeholders and community members have told us and have said when we've gone around Gauteng. So I want to check if there's anybody that wants to talk and raise any questions about this bill, what Mr. Chikamvi has said, so that he might be able to explain further, or we must take note of what you are saying and what you think this legislation should be doing. So let me check if there's anybody that would want to raise anything. Okay, we've got some microphones that will be coming around, so let me start this side. I'm going to take the hands. Okay, the lady here with the yellow jersey and black top, that's number one. Number two is the lady in the pink top, I think it's pink. That's you with a white cap, that's number two. Number three next to you, gentleman in the black top. And then I'm going to go to number four at the back there, the lady, I think it's the person with a yellow shirt, that's number four. And then number five here in front. Okay, let me take this side first. So there's 5 hands. I'm going to take those hands first, and then I'll come to this side. There's a roving microphone. Please just give your name. It's for recording purposes, so that when they listen to the recording, they know who's spoken. Just give your name, and then please ask your question or your comment on this bill. Thank you so much. Number one. Sorry, just hold on. That microphone is not working properly. Just hold on, please, ma'am. Sorry about that. Let them sort it out so that everybody can hear. There we are. Okay. There we are.
Thank you, Chairperson. My name is Poppy Gianni. I'm from Karankua. I think this bill is very complex, especially when coming to the pricing of taxi fare. Number one, I don't know, can I start by asking the question whether those taxi industry is regulated? If it is not, then we've got a problem. Especially the example when the price of the taxi fees goes up because of the petrol prices, and when the petrol prices go down, then the price of the taxis still stand. They are not decreasing, that's the problem. And the issue of the regulation of those prices is very important to us, because most of us were taking taxi, the taxi industry as our mode of transport. So when we go to work using those taxis, And usually we don't even get increase each and every time when the petrol price increase. So that's the issue. And we don't have a place or where we can complain, where we can lodge our complaint, especially when the prices goes up and not going down. So we need to first establish those satellite that the speaker said they will establish the satellite around all the country where we can go and complain. But because presently we don't have those satellite, I think it's an issue. We must start there too, to establish those places of where we can go and complain. So my question is, when are we going to establish those satellite where we can go and complain? Because presently those taxi fees are very high. So when we go to even those offices of taxi people and said, can you please do this? They said the government doesn't subsidize the industry of the taxi. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that question, an important question. Thank you very much. Number 2, the person identified as number 2. Thank you.
Dumelang. Lebitso la ka ke Agnes Makhalatiba from Extension 9 here in Refilwe. Na bili e ke a utlwa a ke utlwisise. Ene tse ding tsa tsona ke tlo di botsisa, tse ding tsa tsona di a nlatla. Number 1, did you invite Santaco, South African National Taxi Association? Ke understand hore if le sa invite taxi association, we are lost. Kare ke bona ditaba tse ding tsa bona ke bona tshwantse ba di answer. Nna ke ngwana mobu, ke belehetswe mo Refilwe, ke tsene sekolo mo Refilwe, ka fetsa mo Refilwe. A ke hopole le ka tsatsi le 1 ba re hona le community meeting le taxi association. Ba re botsa gore taxi ya namella, he namella petrolo ke so he theo ga re tlo khono theo. A ke hopole a re kopane le taxi association. Taxi association re kopana le yona if re na le funeral or if re na le trip to Mpumalanga re nyaka taxi. Mara fela a re meet. Ke khopela ho tswa mo billing ela. Kwa ke nnang ko teng ke na le di extensions 3 ke 7, 9 and 10. And from kwa ke nnang ko teng is 7.8 kilometers. Bana ba sekolo ba tsamaya ka maoto. Re na le association, re na le Petra mine, community ha benefit selo. E ka plow back to the community. Our kids are suffering. Re ngwetse di petition, re rometse go Department of Education, mara a re ke re thuso. Ngwana monyane wa 5 years to 10 years, ibile ke go khole thata o namella le thaba, go dangerous le mo thabeng o fetang mo teng. A ke hopole ba re le di patrola mo Hlatheng mo go fetang bana mo teng. So dilo tse ding tse ne di nyaka lena tafola ya legislature le inviting Santaco le local taxi association le ba botse before le tla go community gore ya go community ro fitla re botse community ka bill ya association. So lena re ka tlhalosetsana byang gore re fitla go bathong re be ntwe one re utlwane. Ene engwa hape bo mama nna re khopela le re thuseng transport ya bana ba sekolo ra e khopela because of le di taxi tse di operatang 15 seater ena metsa bana ba 45, which is wrong. Bana bale even yesterday or day before yesterday ho tlhokofetse bana ba 5. Driver o wrong o no tsena bana bale ba phiathile ke truck ka mo rafo a isa patela e patela after 8 years. Tlabe o le ko kae ngwana tlabe a le ko kae. Ene engwa hape ka le Roma le botseng taxi association e tlo go bathong re khopela ba khaleme di taxi driver a re tsuru molao o ba o tsia go di taxi ownereng or byang na they are bullying the community. They are bullying the community. Aba bolele le community pila. Na kwa ke nnang ko teng, taxi ya local ha e tsene ka mogare ga motse. Ke tlile ka maoto mo. He ke boela morao, ke boela ka maoto, mara taxi e teng. Abanya ke taxi e nyane e tsene ka mogare ga motse, ke e patele 15 ranta e ntlise mo ke nyakang go ya mo teng. Ra tla ishega. Go na le lack of communication. And ha o re wa bolela, ha o ka haeka ka namela taxi koloi ya ntate Makena. He fitha ko pele kwa ba bracket ba o tseela 100 ranta. 100 ranta e la e ko officing ya association. It's ya ke bona ba e bea ka mpotleng. So re phela botlhoko, re khopela le khalemeng taxi association ba na le bad attitude to the community, and gore ba gola because of rena. Legislature na ke rata o leboha he litlile mo bathong, mara ntho wa ne ke tlo le botsang yona, if ke le khatile di khontshe ke tlo re sorry mo lena. Ka re no sorry ya di electioning le tla le kitima le tlo re botsa ka taxi associationing e le reng rena ha e re benefit re ya di electioning le kitimetse mo di bili tse le bolelang ka tsona mo ke tšhelete e le reng ka be le isitse ko Hammanskraal. Our beloved families and friends are dead because of cholera. And lena le aware as legislature gore le tamola Rooivale a le cleaniwe le nyako le cleana no so because of re lositse our families. Next time he le tla go bathong le tlo presenter, you must come first to the community le re botsiseng hore le nyaka eng re ka lokisa eng. Gona banong hona le letamo a shilile mola la 7 trillions le na le 7 to 8 years ba le agile a re flash re no metsi a jojo re ya toilet re phiega ga ntšintši re berekisa le di toilet tsa plastic mo ile reng a re sa dinyaka re nyaka a good service to the community. Ene ge le tloga mo lena gona banong a le teng mo local le tshwara N4 Silverton Captain Park Pretoria West. Why he le tla mo bathong le sa bethe strolo pele re bethe hoko le tsene ka mo ara mekhukhu informal settlement le lebelleng is nyoka nyoka le lebelleng the black people are suffering because of that table. We are not fair to the community. Thank you very much.
Can I just can I just explain something firstly? We are not here because of elections. So I want to make that very clear. These bills, this legislation has nothing to do with elections. I think we must make that clear. Legislation, there's new legislation that comes in, there's amendments that take place, whether it's transport, whether it's agriculture, whether it's health, it's not about elections. That is why you have a parliament. That's why you have legislatures. Part of their job, or on an ongoing basis, is to review the laws of the land, to review our legislation. Sometimes legislation is not working. You change it. It's got nothing to do with elections, man. I want to just firstly indicate that. And first, let me say this. We are not here because of elections. These are 3 pieces of legislation that have come to our committee. We are going around the province. It's got nothing to do with elections. I think firstly I needed to say that. Secondly, as I indicated right at the start, we are here because we wanted to come to this area to hear from community members here in Cullinan and surrounding areas. What do you think about these pieces of legislation that are coming to us, have been brought to us as a transport committee? Let me say this. The Gauteng legislature was in Hammanskraal yesterday. They were in Hammanskraal yesterday. They went to go and assess what is the situation around water issues. This portfolio committee is a portfolio committee on transport. So we are not here to go and look at illegal connections, etc. That's not our role as this committee. We've made notes what you've said, man. We have made notes with you, and we are not insensitive. We understand the dire situation that is happening in Hammanskraal. We are fully aware of that, and we understand. And we are also deeply saddened by some of the lives that have been lost. But there was a team of the legislature that went into Hammanskraal yesterday. The minister, the national minister of water affairs has been here in Hammanskraal. Provincial government is looking at how it will be working and can work together with the municipality and national government to intervene in some of the problems, and some of them we know are long-standing problems. But as this particular committee, we are not a committee that deals with water issues. We are not a committee that looks at illegal connections. You've raised some points about transport and scholar transport. We've made notes of those. We will interact with the department and the Department of Education and see how we can come back here to see how some of those matters can be addressed. But I think I wanted to stress the point. Today, we as a transport committee are here to talk about these pieces of legislation. But that doesn't mean that we are not aware of other things that are happening in surrounding areas here. I thought I must make that point clear. But I want to make it very clear, we are not here for elections. Well, that's not why we're here. And I think we must understand that. So let me take, but we've made notes of some of the comments you've made. Let me take number 3, and then I'll take number 4 and number 5. Thank you very much.
Morning, everyone. My name is Zwelabo Macheke from GPDSA and a member of Maboning community in Soshanguve. What the bill says is so sweet, but I have some questions. I think it's 2 or 3. I just want to know if the Department of Transport is taking over the Taxi Association. That's my question number 1, because the Taxi Association is doing the plannings on their own, and then they are operating on their own. They have associations that are running the industry. So now if the Department of Transport is saying they're going to help us with the taxi fees, so I don't know how are they going to do that, because of it will take them to take over the industry so that they can make that possible. And then the second one, you talked about the pricing about the petrol price. I think again it's not going to work, because if the taxi fees is increasing because of petrol, then which means the Department of Transport has to take over the operations of the petrol so that they can reduce the petrol price before they can talk about the fees. So the fees they increase, the taxi fees increase because of petrol, and the petrol is rising almost every now and then. So if they're saying they're going to reduce the fees because of petrol, I don't know how they're going to do that. So can you at least come up with another method that you can use in order to reduce the price fees? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very to the point, important questions. Number 4, and then we'll come to the last hand here.
Good morning. My name is Popo More. I'm from Garankua. I'd like to thank the legislature for coming here and having the consultation with the public. Mr. Chair, you said to the guy that was doing the presentation that he needs to explain so that when we come out of here, we are clear. What I want to say is that you have a proposal here So he said there'll be designated places where communities can go and complain at. I think by now when you're doing this presentation, we should have places already identified that will be attending to the places. Now, number two is, I don't want to come out of here having understood the proposal here, only understanding about the taxi and the bus. I think most of us have understood the part where it's talking about the transportation fares and stuff. But I want to have a clear understanding of this bill when I get out of here. I don't want to go back to my community and say, no, they were talking about the taxi fares, regulating the taxis. Again, I want to say, please don't just get involved where you're regulating the taxi fares or the bus fares. There is safety also there. Who is regulating that? And by right, we should be having people from the Department of Transport with you here because we have other questions that maybe you might not be able to answer. So another thing is, while you're regulating the taxi fares, we've had a young lady there in the Eastern Cape telling the president about the price of the cooking oil, which is expensive. Now, when you regulate the prices of the fuel and the taxis, what about the food cost? Because now the taxis are going up, food is going up. Are you also going to regulate the food price?
Thank you. And let's take the last hand here. Please proceed. Thank you. Just hold on, sir. Can we bring a mic here that's working, please? Thanks, Fumlani. Before you proceed, I just want to check with the Office of the HOD of the Provincial Department of Transport and Logistics. You heard some of the members, some people may ask something else about transport. Yourselves must be ready to respond. And please take note of the questions, particularly the issue of scholar transport that's been raised. It's a matter that we will have to look into and come back to this community. But I'm just saying the team that's with you, Russell, from the Office of the HOD, make notes of some of the questions that are outside of this bill but are transport related, so that we are able to come back here. We will have to come back here probably and respond to some of the other questions that may come up. So I just wanted to ask yourselves, please take notes of that. Thanks. Sorry, sir, for interrupting you.
Thanks, Chairperson. Morning, everybody. My name is Franz. I'm from Soshanguve, Ward 11. Ke tloela ho bolela sekgowa, ke bolela sa haheso le nkwa gabotse. Ka taba ya price ya di-taxi, ko Soshanguve re na le problem ka gore re sentse re patela. If you remember, ho se lo ba na le corona, and the taxis ne ba sa laishe full load, ba laishe half load. Whereas mo e leng hore the passengers ne se load ka mo taxi, ne la half load, re patela extra money, re patela the empty seats because of corona. Now corona e fitile, ha o sana corona, but you are still paying that amount. That amount is still there. And ka understanding ya ka, ke itse e le hore di-taxi price ya yona e namella every after 4 years. Mara today taxi e namella once petrol e namella le yona ya namella. Petrol e theoha yona ya ema, he namella ya namella. Ha ba sa re ka hore e theohile, let's stop there. They are just continuing ho nameletsa taxi fares. Ke problem e re nang le yona re tla mo tabeng ya transport-o, and ke na le nnete ya hore le ditsela tse ko rena re nnang re sentse re tsamaya mo Grondpadeng, ga re tšhinke re bana le sekontiri. So ne re kopa hore di-area tse pedi tsela tsa ko rena ko Ward 11, it's only 2 areas out of 5 areas tse di senang sekontiri, ke area JJ and area HH. So ne re kopa hore ba ditsela le teng le tlo re thusa ka taba ya sekontiri, ka e le hore he pula ena re kopana le mathata a ma serious a e leng hore re fetsa re sa itse hore re ka ira eng. And maswabi ko hore, hona banong re tlile mo meeting o mo Cullinan. Document e ke kry-ile only this paper. I get the bills and other the regulator, that document never like that one of the officials. So we don't know this document. And then the information I can't keep it in my head, all of it. So I have to get something so that I can make a revision if it go high. So now I the document, they say, hey, Lord, they are available, the reference on. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Let me just say that when people were coming in at the start, they were being given copies of the documents. They were here. It may be that they've run a bit short. I will ask the team to see what they can do to assist. But when most people came in, there were documents that were given out. So they may have run out of a few. But what I want to ask from Lonnie, can you do me a favor? Can you give that gentleman this pack of documents? And we'll check how they can get more copies. But there were documents given out earlier, and we apologize that you were not able to get a set of documents. What I'm going to do is I think we must ask the department to respond on these questions to ask Mr. Chikamvi, and then we'll take hands on this side. Mr. Chikamvi, do you want to deal with these questions quickly? And then we'll come to this. Should we take all of them? Okay. Let's, Mr. Chikamvi, let's take all of them. We'll take the rest of the hands. Can I check on this side here for hands? All right. Okay. Number one, the gentleman in the black cap over there. Number one. Number two, the person in the grey jersey. Number three, with the black top next to you. And then number four at the back there, with the black as well, number four. So those are the only four hands that I've seen. I will take those. So let's start with number one, then number two, number three, number four. Just give your name, please, so that we have it for recording purposes. All right, the first person. Thank you so much.
Kalaboa, regularly do medicine. Ke dumedise le setšhaba se ke se bonang ka mo re ke re ke a le leboa legislature le bolela nnete daramo le tlile ko Hammanskraal mara one jaanong ka gore mo le re file dipampiri tsa bili go na le dipotšišo tše mmalwanyana tše ke nyakang go di botšiša go ya le ka dilo tše lena le di boletšeng. One, ke bone le bolela ka price control. Price control le bolelang ka yona ke kwešiša gore bili ya lena ga se ešo e šome ga se ešo le dumelelane ka yona mara price control ya ona yo kgona gore covera rena re le batho ba Hammanskraal goba batho ba Mamelodi na or ile o covera lena le nnoši na ke number one. Ya bobedi ke bone le bolela gore o mongwe le o mongwe o ne le ditetla goba ditokelo tša go yo bula mokotla goba case a bulela whoever wa tla beng a sa di tšona a le nagana gore nka yo bula case ke bolela National Taxi Association or ke bulela Santago ke ile go lala ke robetše le bana ba ka le mosadi a ka ko gae na ke kgopela le nkarabeng mowe a nke re la tseba gore ba a bolaya. So ke kopela le nkarabe ke nagana gore le bolela ka bili ne le sa bolele ka di-taxi fela le boletše ka bili ye e bolela le ka di-bus le ka terene. Di-bus tše le bolelang ka tšona rena re na le tšona na ke nto e ke nyakang go e tseba ande e le gore re na le tšona di ko kae le di beile kae di nametša bomang ka gore ko rena di nametše motho. Ya boraro ga le bone o le bohlokwa le province gore le rena batho ba Hammanskraal terene e re tshwanetše gore re tla re kgone go patela tšhelete e nnyane go ya le ka bili ya lena e le bolelang ka tšhelete e nnyane a le bone le rena terene e re tshwanetše na. Ya bofelo a e kweša bohloko go ne le sese o boletše ka taxi e bolaileng bana ba bahlano Ke kgopela go le botšiša gore selo se ne le se beile mola se ngwadilwe safe and reliable transport le bolela ka efeng ye e leng ko dipotleng tša lena na? Ke a leboga.
Thank you very much. Number 2.
My name is Moses Maseko. Thanks for this bill. My question is the first one. The challenge we have got is not about the challenge we have got is about the aeroplanes. The price they change each and every day. Sometimes you can find the price of airplane to go to Durban today is said 1,200. When you are at Durban, the price change. I think the regulator must check that the price of the aeroplane must be fixed. And again, also the transport. When it's come to December, they increase the price. Even in tax, they increase the price. Even the aeroplane, they increase the price. This bill, I think, maybe is going to benefit us because the regulator, the challenge, maybe the office of the regulator, they must also be in the local, then can ask access to the office. Because anytime, even they want to increase the price, they can increase price anyway. Let's, before they pass this bill, let's have the board on the local first, then they can pass this bill. I think it's better. Because if you have a problem, no way we can report this at this time. It's no way. Let's have the office at the local, then can even to submit our, because the challenge, because anytime, when it's bonus, December, they increase the price of the petrol, they increase the price of the taxi and the aeroplane, because even the price of the laborers, we are working, the money is not increasing, but the transport is increasing. I think this regulator maybe can assist a lot, but make very fast to have an office, then can assist the people. And also, this board, they must also consult with the community before they approve this, their bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Number 3.
Dumelang. Ka lebitso ke Simon from Amanskrala. Na ke na le dilo tse mmalwa fela tse ke nyako di toucha mo billing ye ke e boneng ye. Even although e re tshwere le na abuti na e bala a ke e bone eo. But a e tshwenye. Gauteng legislature as se mathomo re tla for transport. Bili e ho ya ka lena molao o le nyako utlwa rena re reng ka molao o lena le o implementelang rena le sa tla mo rena la re butsisa hore re ka shumishana bjang hore re lokise mathata a transport. Sa bobedi, reliable and safety transport re le bolelang e lore ke a di bese rena di bese rena le kgwedi le a week kwa Amanskrala ho sna di bese. A reliable transport no ke taxi fela, and which re bolela so ka di kaosane hona le khona lo re taxi na mella hape mo le lore ena le 2 months ena melletse ena mella hape. So before le re tlisetsa di bill e tla mo setjhabeng itse mathata a setjhaba le solve mathata a transport, and then morao le ire di bill tseo tsa lena le ska dira le le one le re bitseng, because he le re irela le re tsela di decision go bofelong ro felletsa re sa kwane. Nna no re desperate ha ona di base kwa Amanskrala le re tlisetsa taba bill e leng hore e sa tlo implementiwa, a se jo implementi e sa tlo ko ra hore le ngwa ho tlang or after 5 years e ka implementiwa mola batho ba safara ka transport. So ka jogole le rena re ska bolela ka yona. We need transport ya di bese di boaneng Amanskrala because people are suffering. They cannot lose more money. Mo la ele hore Gauteng Legislature of Transport le Gauteng Province of Transport. Di teng ha di tlo addressa issue eo kwa Hammanskraal. We need buses. When are they coming back? If they lena le karabo, re botseng gore di o boaneng. After that, le re tlisetse bill e kwa Hammanskraal. Because you were supposed to come Hammanskraal la re jiga. So bill ye re nyaka le tlo re balla yona hape kwa Hammanskraal. Ke a leboha.
I'll take the last hand, number 4. Thank you.
Dumelang. Wa bua mo ke George Nemukula from Hammanskraal. Nna ke ntho e ke nyako e tlhalohanya ka bill e. Ke nyako tlhalohanya ke nyako itse hore e benefita mang bill e. Ho tlo benefita nna ke le monamedi or ho tlo benefita lona or e tlo benefita di owner na. Ka hore a ke khono tlhalohanya ke nyako itse hore e tlo bereka bjang hore ke khono itse ka hore hona no di transport Hammanskraal re berekisa ha rena train. Ha rena bese. So ele nkano be example ka re like he ke ya toropong ke tloa ke le Makapane. Tshwantse ke tloa Makapane ke Hammanskraal station and then kona go kara taxi e nkisang toropong. So ke ntho ke nyako e tlhalohanyang hore bill e tlo benefita nna ke le monamedi or e tlo benefita owner or lona na. Ke ntho ke nyako itseng ka lebo.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we've taken the hands that we'd identified. I'm going to, before I hand over to Mr. Chikamvi, I just want to say this. Some of you have raised other matters. All right? We've taken notes of those. Let me just say this, that I'm aware that the department is busy negotiating contracts with bus operators. And I know it includes the Hammanskraal area as well. Okay? Now, we, as a portfolio committee, we do not have those answers on how far those negotiations are and when those new contracts will come into being. We will interact with and I can tell you now, there's no officials here who are dealing with the contracts. They are not here in this meeting. So I think as a portfolio committee, we will talk about this afterwards. We will have to come back here because there are a number of issues that are being raised here. Not only the issues of safety, the issues of transport in general. It's scholar transport, it's bus transport, it's trains as well. And we know that there was a serious problem with the vandalism of different train lines around the province. And PRASA is a national entity which is busy with the restoration of all lines across the province that were vandalized. So there are a number of issues that have been raised here. We will not be able to give all those answers today. We will come back here. We will come back here so that when we come back here, a proper response and briefing can be given to the community on the issues that you are raising here. I wanted to just indicate that because Mr. Chikamvi, when he responds now, he will talk about the bill and the questions you've asked about the bill. He's not going to be able to answer you on bus contracts that are being renegotiated, etc., train lines, etc. So I wanted to firstly say to you, some of those questions won't be answered now. We will come back here. We will raise these with the department. We'll come back here with them. That is what the assurance I can give you, that we will come back here. Because there are a number of challenges that you're raising here. So let me hand over to you, Mr. Chikamvi, to respond. And after that, I will allow portfolio committee members to come in as well. But over to you, Mr. Chikamvi. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and thank you for allowing me to respond to some of the questions which were raised by members of the public. I'll then have to, because I've seen most of the questions they are repeating, it's more, they fall under one category. So what I'll then try to do is I will respond to the question which was raised by Ms. More first, the one which indicates on the issue, which she was indicating that there's a need, she needs to then go back to the community and respond to and explain to them what is this bill is all about, not to talk about issues of taxis, etc. So in elaborating to that question, in answering that question, Honorable Chair, I'll then be touching to other questions which were raised. So basically, what are we intending to do with this transport, economic regulation of transport bill? The bill is intending to regulate the transport sector as a whole. When we are referring to the transport sector, we're talking about planes, trains, buses, taxis, the Uber, we're talking about the cab, we're talking about freight rail, like the train is all like Shamalata, etc., etc. So what we then realized is currently honorary entities or institutions which are responsible for regulating specific sectors within the transport sector. So what happens is that I'll give you a broad example. Understand that. There is I'll take the one one. I'll take, for instance, the electricity one. There is what we call ESCOM. And ESCOM is the only power generator so far. Kibona baba provide matlakasi throughout the country. And have a provider matlakasi all throughout the country. ESCOM igatso saying it decided hore mabone o tlo reka ka 100 rand 1 kilowatt, for an example. O tla reka ka 100 rand. And there's no way where you can get supplier electricity besides going to ESCOM. So ESCOM is what we call a monopoly. Is the only entity that is providing a specific service in this case, which is electricity, to the rest of the country. So, in order to ensure that ESCOM is not abusing position, like I'll give a practical example to those who drink alcohol. During lockdown, we knew the price of yala in a ridiculous. So, biri e reka 15 rand, no e reka 50 rand. What informs that? Because biri next time, people just decide to say, I have this because of I'm owning this beer. Therefore, it means ngao chacha price ekenyakang, and there's nowhere else where you can go and get that beer. So it's a simple practical example which I can give you. So it's when we gave an example, Yadi takes. We said the only transport, like I had one of the somebody raised an issue that there is currently no buses here. It's only taxis which you are relying on, and those taxis, they are not even providing or covering other areas. For an example, because it's the only source of transport or only means of transport which you currently having. So by the way, because kibona fela, and when you don't have a choice. Or go to complain anyway to say, guys, can you provide taxis to this specific area? So going back to the one Nesa and Negetalos. So there's what we call, going to the ESCOM one, sorry, there's an entity which we call National Energy Regulator of South Africa, which is called NESA. Merago and NESA is to ensure that the prices which are being charged by ESCOM to the end user is reasonable. Irreasonable, what do we mean by saying irreasonable? In actual fact, the regulator, when determining that price, it will make sure by saying, okay, kilowatt it over 5 rand. ESCOM will it be in a position or it will be continue to offer that service which it is currently offering? We do understand what you call investment into businesses. Like if I am to divert from ESCOM, because ESCOM is a state-owned entity at the moment. So if it was a private sector, it was a private entity. Then we know that there's investments which they are pouring, which are going to be invested within ESCOM to do what? To build other generators, other power supply unities. So there's money which is needed to be invested in such. So when the regulator is determining the price, you need to also factor in, because are they going to get the rate of return to the money which they have invested? So back to the transport issue. Within the transport, we have got Ports Regulator of South Africa. Ports Regulator of South Africa is responsible for regulate the prices which are being charged by Transport National Ports Authority to like your transport post terminals and other private owned entities which are operating within the port system. So the intention of economic regulation, in summation to what I was trying to explain before I enter into the components of the bill, ke gore where you find an entity has got power within a respective market, there is a need for government to intervene to make sure that entity is regulated so that you protect members of the public. Because it's the only entity which will be providing a specific transport services. Hence, we used an example of the taxi because I thought when we talking of the taxis, it's a realistic example which I can give to you. When, like in Dato raised a question about why price the plane is fixed. The airline say namela upatela 1,000 rand flying to Durban, but when you come back, they are telling you it's 2.8. So, in responding to that question, for example, when you look at how the prices are being imposed to the end user within the aviation space, honestly, what we call infrastructure charges. Say what charging ki airports company of South Africa. That component at the moment is regulated because of the airport tailor. At the moment, when you look at our national airports, they are owned by the state, and they are charging the airlines, say the lendang to those airports, the issues of handling of luggage, etc., etc. They are charging those airlines for providing those services. So that component is currently regulated by what we call the regulating committee. And for the plane already fly again, there's what we call air navigational services. So those air navigational services, they are being provided by the state as we're talking through ATNS, which is Air Traffic Navigational Services. So through that component, the charging those airlines in utilizing the communication service, because all which are called designated routes, which you'll be in fact basically a person who will be will be providing services for air navigational. He'll be the one who will be communicating with the pilots to say you need to go up with a certain altitude, you need to move to the left, you need to decrease, drop, increase your speed to what, and also request for clearance for takeoff and landing. So they charge a specific fee for that. Now, when it comes to the final fee, which is now being charged by the airlines, that is determined by competition. You find your price at Airlink, price at SAA, price at SAF Air. They differ. You find both flights that are going to Durban. However, omo 600 rand, omo 10,000, omo 5,000. There is competition with that respective space. So you have got a choice to choose whether I am using SAA, I'm using Airlink, or I'm using Fly SA, Ethiopian Airline. There's various airlines which you can choose from. So with that regard, where there is competition, there's no need for economic regulation because of the demand and supply. The competition within the market is the one that determines the price. Therefore, you have got a choice. So we are only going to intervene where we know clearly that you don't have a choice. Like for instance, when we used an example that it takes to say, currently there are areas which we are quite aware of in South Africa that there's no any other mode of transport which they are currently using. You find it's only taxi, meter taxis. So if it's only taxis. So if it is taxis with this regard, then the minister needs to first determine whether there is an economic need for that respective area to be regulated. Then once the minister has determined that surely indeed there is a need to regulate that respective space, kimo regulating. But this process, how is the minister going to determine to say, regulate the taxi or regulate the bus? You find over here in Cullinan there's only one bus operator, and this bus operator, he can choose to charge you any amount which they feel like they want to charge you. Then that's where the regulator will then come in to say, no, we see that you have 70% of the market share. Therefore, the minister will then determine to say, as of today, you are subject to be regulated. Which means every time when those bus operators want to increase tariff fare or decrease it, which is impossible to decrease anyway, to increase it only, then they will have to approach the regulator with their proposal, and then the regulator will gazette the intention and go to the members of the public and consult members of the public to say, Northern Star buses, they are intending to increase price ka 20 rand. These are the reasons why they are going to increase the price of ticket bus. And then you as members of the public, you can let's say the inputs. You factor in your reasons as to do you agree or you disagree. If you're disagreeing, you provide us with reasons. If you agree, you provide us with reasons. Then the regulator will then go back. At the same time, it will also be consulting with the regulated entity, in this case, which is the Northern Bus Services. So when I'm explaining, giving an example of the bus, this applies to even Godi Kepeng, the train, Prasa. This applies also to the Cape. So when we are talking about this, we're talking it's the transport sector in its entirety. So when I pick a specific example, try to assume to say even in the rail space, it's the similar process which needs to be conducted. So after I'll then go back to come into a decision by the regulator in the proposal which has been made. So the regulator will then sit down and look and say, no, given factors number 1, 2, 3, and 4, economic regulation is also intended to make sure that the service standards of the services which are being provided to members of the public is efficient. So, taxi or basi e tlamelo e namele, how do you gamara basi e la bonus kontir? Ne, how bonus kontirunzi gamara basi now the issue of safety now is now kicking in. To say when we come and say we're not reduce a price, is that respective bus operator going to be in a position to maintain his buses already very standard sharp? These are some of the elements which we look at. Hence our operator within the respect are by reducing price at the ticket, but what merekela about lose a merekona because of our side such which he was intending to make. And Rativa the basic the so far. The taxi so far. There is a need to start planning on a future investment, to planning on a new fleet, to say, okay, within 5 years, I need to be in a position where I can buy additional 100 buses, new buses. Because of the buses taken now, within 5 years, they won't be in a good condition. Some of them won't be roadworthy, and they'll be costly to maintain because of. You find in terms of the service matter, you now have to deal with issues of the suspension. There's a lot which is embedded when you're determining the price I take it, which you end up paying. On the other hand, there's this what we call an element of which has got direct impact on why they are always raising prices at a given time. Key issue air fuel, which we gave an example at the taxi. This cuts across all the modes. Once fuel goes up, the plane is affected, train is affected, what do you call this thing? The taxi, the Uber, everybody is affected. Even food prices, normally I'm quite aware, somebody said price at Ijo goes very high. It's very high, what are you doing about that? So once fuel goes up, everything goes up. But now the question is, when everything is going up, is it going up according to a reasonable fare, or is somebody taking an advantage to say, kaobana ke nna ke one, ke na le taxi e tloang mo unit D to unit C. Therefore, because petrol na metsi ka 2 rand, nna ke tla nameletsa taxi ya ka ka 10 rand. Without anybody having to come and intervene to say, no, but 10 rand is not a reasonable fare which you're supposed to increase your fare with. So Kimo Ilungre, this economic regulator now comes in place. Like there's an example of somebody who said, Arnadi training ko Hammanskraal. In responding to that, the bill is proposing for, like I indicated on chapter 2, it talks about access to rail infrastructure. So which means if on a chelete yaro regedi locomotive, it's an example which I'm giving you. Then you can then approach Transnet. Okay, since well you are not using this infrastructure, from Hammanskraal or Prasa in that case, you are not loading. There isn't a train Eli Chambato from Hammanskraal to Pretoria. Can I be allowed access to that infrastructure? Then, if you agree when Ale Prasa agreement then it's fine. But should Prasa decide to say no, we are not going to give you that access to that rail infrastructure, this is where then you come to the regulator auto complain or to say no, I'm requesting for access to this specific portion infrastructure Prasa. Then the regulator will then start conducting what we call an investigation to go and determine whether surely indeed is there capacity on that infrastructure which you are seeking access to. So it's like what Mejiani has indicated to say, this bill is complex. It's not only dealing with the taxi component, but we also it cuts across all the modes of transport. And the intention of the bill as it stands is to establish this entity which will be empowered to can deal with the issues which we are currently addressing. These are one of the reasons why we need to have this bill now. Currently, there isn't any piece of legislation which is allowing us to can have those satellite offices where one can then raise those issues too. So by having this bill signed by the president after you have made your inputs, whether you disagree or you agree, then once the bill is in place, then this is where we will then have to deal with the issues of such as implementation to say, okay, these are the cases which are coming into the regulator. There's a case whereby there is issue of access. Somebody wants to access a specific route within the rail space, for an example, like Kaya Hammanskraal. Therefore, should the regulator realize, surely indeed there is capacity and Prasa are iberegisi, but Prasa will be telling you, no, our future plans are to expand that rail corridor, etc., etc. Then the regulator can also check when or requesting access to utilize the infrastructure. Only they also maintain that infrastructure now. Should they grant you that access? So it's a complex dynamic and a technicality which is applied when we are dealing with issues of economic regulation. So where there's competition, there's no need to regulate, simply because of price it determines key competition. Like I'll give you another example, which with the Uber guys and the meter taxi guys, for an example. The meter taxi guys, they are complaining to say Uber is price fixing. When they're saying Uber is price fixing, for an example, then why are they saying Uber is price fixing? Because they are saying we are currently being regulated. Those are the meter taxi guys saying that. We are currently being regulated. We sit down as an association, we agree to say our kilometer is going to be 12 rand per kilometer, for an example. So if our kilometer is 12 rand per kilometer, There comes Uber, which are bringing a new platform, which is e-hailing, which is, it goes and pick you up at your door. With the meter taxis, you were using your phone, but now you just use an app. You can track your vehicle, where it is, etc., etc. So what they were then saying is that the price which Uber is now charging per kilometer, you will find that it's 5 rands. So if it is 5 rand, this then means that Uber are entering into the market and charge lower prices so that they can do what? Ba kgone ho bolaya business e le ya di-meter taxi. So when as an end user or a whole checker, there is competition, but the question is there fair competition there? The answer is no, because the other one is killing the other one by decreasing the prices ridiculously, by placing, by imposing the price ridiculously low, so that the other party cannot operate. Because when, if you are holding 12 rand and 5 rand, obviously a lot of people are going to use 5 rand. Therefore, it means all our 12 rand are sanity client. Business high irang, yeah, sure. A business issue, then all our ones who are Uber waiter, who sits alle one way no marketing. Has it all one waiter? Wabu, let homo patella scolo to 35 rand that's in patel. Arawa, 100 rand. So, how do we then go in trying to ensure that such behavior and tendencies don't occur within our transport system? And then I'll then have to respond to the question, who benefits? Who is going to benefit out of this bill enacted? The response is simple. It's the end user as well as the service provider. So in other ways, we are saying if bus, Northern Star for an example, I'll go back to the bus. Northern Star, they are not going to operate without having profit, without gaining profit. That is highly unacceptable. Ugaseti business ever run a loss. So it's going to benefit them. On the other hand, it's going to benefit you as the end user to say, okay, since when you are running your business, you want to gain maximum profit as much as you can. By doing so, you are not supposed to abuse the position that you are having in gaining that profit. Therefore, we come in to say, when instead of your 10 rand profit, we understand how about we give you 6 rand? So for the next 3 years, and then after 3 years, we can come back and sit down and negotiate that I want the guy kupula price or the guy. So basically, in a nutshell, Honorable Chair, I think I've covered most of the questions, and there's one where you was, which was raised to say by Boma Cheke, to say, are we liaising with the taxi associations? Are we talking to them? How I can respond to say, once the bill is enacted, there isn't any decision which the regulator is going to make without consulting members of the public, without consulting the respective entity which is affected, and everybody who's directly affected by any issue or any problem within the transport sector regarding rendering their services or infrastructure to the end users. Complex pricing. I'm trying to look if I didn't cater for other issues. The one on the food prices, like I've indicated, logistics cost in South Africa is highly unacceptable as compared to some of the countries which we have benchmarked in. The logistics costs they are sitting at around 55%. While as all comparative countries logistics cost component the logistics cost it only comprises of 35%. So there's a need for us to then come into the sector and try to assess and analyze to say how can we try to reduce those logistics costs, because if logistics costs are unacceptably very high, therefore also food cost is going to be high, because for you to end up transportation, transport and logistics plays a role within that space. Buses with no, there was a question of buses, Honorable Chair. I think I'm not in in a position to say where are the buses, or I think like the Honorable Chair is in.
Dumelang. We doing the last presentation today, and we want to thank Batho ba buileng on the two presentations that re fetileng ko tsona. So I am going to ask Ntate John Motsatsing to do the last presentation, your National Road Traffic Amendment Bill. And we are going to ask him to talk to the important parts in the bill. And that those who want to speak, please note down. We will open for comments and questions on the two groups at the same time so that re kgone ho fetsa. And we are going to ask Kora Halibulela, stick to the bill. Re the other issues that we chair in Retaboa as transport committee to engage with the communities. This is about Gauteng. It is not about Hammanskraal or about Tshwane. So we've been to other areas in the province as well. So we are asking that when we speak, let us focus on the presentation and that John is going to do. And I'm asking him to come on board now and be straight to the point as well, that John, don't motivate as well. Utshwana le rona the politicians will speak. So just get straight to the point when you speak. Thank you very much. Tate John Motsatsing from the Department of Transport nationally. Thank you.
Obrigado, Mr. Presidente, honorable members, setjhaba so sohle ke a le dumedisa. As the Modula Stula buile gore nna ke tlo bua ka National Road Traffic Amendment Bill. Basically, molao o zama go amenda the current molao o applying across the country in relation to ditsela mo gore motho a kry-e license go zama go improve road safety lo go leka go deala le fraud and corruption within the road traffic environment. And some of the issues that were raised by members of the public more so related to the safety of vehicles or safety of public transport, eba e berekisang, which is what generally this National Road Traffic Amendment or National Road Traffic Act tries to deal with. It deals ka the roadworthiness ya di koloi, it deals ka whether a person is authorized to drive a motor vehicle, or whether that person has an appropriate driving license. So generally, this is the blueprint ya molao o berekisiwang across the country in relation to road traffic management. So, but what is important about it is that izamale gape go introduce go regulate the driving school le the number plate. And I think maybe as the chair has said, ke tla zama go push and maybe try and focus more on the issues which affect the community at large and which are very important to the community. Now, in terms of my presentation outline, ne tlo bua ke yona background e setseng ke buile object ya National Road Traffic Amendment le clause by clause explanation of the bill, lo gore who did we consult. Generally, before re fitla mo, the bill was published mo Government Gazette, and obviously the structures tse leng gore probably maybe the thing within the Refilo community tsa di road safety ambassadors. They were also engaged in terms of making inputs with regards to road safety related issues regarding roadworthiness, the pedestrian issues regarding road safety, the scholar patrols, issues relating to how traffic law enforcement officers interact with communities in relation to road safety. The The bill was passed by the National Assembly, Kari 27, it's September 2022. And as I said, is to improve our road safety in terms of those issues that have been identified by the road safety strategy, Millennium Development Goals. I think I've got an echo. I can't hear myself. Okay. The Millennium Development Goals, the bill, the object is that Onako provider for the registration and licensing of motor vehicles, manufacturers, builders, importers, and manufacturers of number plates. It empowers the member of the Executive Council, MEC, to register applicant as a manufacturer, builder, or importers of motor vehicles, regulate the registration and grading of applicants as driving school instructors. As I earlier indicated, this is one of the new provisions that we want to introduce because previously the number plate industry was not regulated. Ensure the misconduct and criminal process are often more efficient and effective, properly enforced and implemented. Empower an MEC to declare as a void all documents purporting to be a driving license. Empower the minister to appoint a person or authority as an inspectorate of driving license testing center. Ensure the compulsory registration and grading of driving schools and the suspension and cancellation of those particular registration by the MEC. Now, when I come to the clause by clause, I'll jump some of the clause by clauses. They are not really relevant to Luna as members of the public and focus more on the ones steadily affecting. Clause 2 and 3 amend section 3A and 3B of the Act to include the NETIS traffic officers, reserve traffic officers, warden, and traffic wardens to be appointed and registered by the chief executive officers. Obviously, this is basically to try and increase podisa le di traffic wardens gore ba kgone go enforce molao in relations to road traffic. Clause 4 amend section 3C of the Act by providing that no person shall be registered or remain registered as an examiner of vehicles, traffic officer, reserve traffic officer, if such persons or his or her spouse acquires a direct or indirect financial interest in the manufacturing and selling, rebuilding or repairing or modifying of motor vehicles. Obviously, one of the things that the community raised relates to okradi koloi tse di tsamayang mo tseleng tsa lero tsa rona di le unroadworthy, and only to find gore tsona tse le reng unroadworthy tseo di owner ke some of the officials mo e le reng ba tshwantse ba make sure gore those vehicles are roadworthy. Now, if lepodisa or a traffic officer a na le taxi, you may find gore ha taxi ya gagwe e feta ha emisi because ke taxi ya gagwe, therefore a ka se kgone go e fine to a certain extent. That's why you find gore to a certain extent we have unroadworthy motor vehicles steady operating, le overloaded motor vehicles steady operating, because some of those vehicles are owned by the officials tailoring the fall under transport in itself. And obviously, if you look at it, a conflict of interest, because that person, I lo go find a koloi ya gagwe, I lo go find a driver ya gagwe for any transgressions ya molao. So in this instance, we want to say, if ever ole le police or le traffic officer, you can then have any road traffic related services that you render. Clause 5 amends section 3D of the Act by providing for a minimum requirements and qualification or a diploma for the registration as an inspector of licenses, examiner of vehicles, examiner for driving license, or a traffic officer. Clause 6 amends section 3E of the Act by providing for the suspension or cancellation of the registration of an examiner of driving license or an examiner if that person was convicted of for a crime as contemplated in Schedule 1 and 2 of the Criminal Procedure Act, if such person has a direct or indirect financial interest in the transport business or any other transport-related services. 7, amend Section 3, capital I of the Act, which provides for the powers and duties of traffic officers. It also then adds a new paragraph in Section 3, capital I, which provides a further power of a traffic officer to impound a motor vehicle if a traffic officer is satisfied on reasonable ground and subject to verification by a traffic officer that that motor vehicle was issued with a notice to discontinue. As I initially said, if ever a traffic officer kopana le koloi e loreng high road weight, obviously a more power ya gore that traffic officer, he must then impound that particular motor vehicle because that koloi ha ona gore ka tswela pele e le gore e unroad weight, because if I tlogela itsamaya e le unroad weight, it means then 2 kilometers along the road e be ye go etsagala accident, it would then mean gore there's a dereliction of duty as a result of that particular traffic officer gore o dumeletse koloi e loreng high road weight go tswela pele e tsamaya. Clause 7 insert a new section 3M to 3O to provide for the application for and registration and grading of centers by the shareholders committee, and also provide for the suspension and cancellation of registration of training centers. Clause 10 amends Section 5 of the Act and provides for manufacturers, builders, importers must apply for a registration to the CEO, and that they shall not manufacture, build or modify, import or sell or distribute motor vehicles registered in the prescribed manner by the CEO. In terms of the community, you have people that basically manufacturers or builders of the trailers. Now, all those people by long horeba builder the trailer, all those people by Lorbana business ya horeba build the koloi, all of them needs to be registered, because if they are registered, then they must comply with certain standard, and to ensure that if ever about registers a trailer, that particular trailer then complies with all the regulations and the prescribed standard. 11 insert Section 5 up until L in the Act. This clause provides for the manufacturers of blank number plates, suppliers of blank number plates, manufacturing of reflective sheeting. This specific one is the number plate, because most of us have come up along a situation whereby okra number plate ya gago e berekisiwa ke koloi o sa itseng gore motho o ikirile bjang number plate o e rekile bjang, because wena ka nako e leng gore koloi eo ba alleja gore ne ile ko teng ne itunetse mo refile mo koloi ya gago e se yo ko Joburg or e se yo ko kae. It's because somebody o fitile ko ba rekisang di number plate a fitla reka number plate ya gago without providing any particular information or documentation gore koloi ke yaka, therefore I'm entitled to have this number plate. So this clause is trying to deal with that particular aspect. Illegal number plates because those illegal number plates are the ones that the criminals any illegal activities, because as a number plate number plate somebody else. Clause 12 amends Section 6 of the Act, which provides for appeal to the shareholders committee in the event of a person is aggrieved at the refusal by the CEO to register him or her as a manufacturer. If a person is aggrieved by the suspension or cancellation of registration, the new proposal seeks to extend the right of appeal of a manufacturer of blank number plates, reflective sheeting or number plate supplier, or blank number plates, supplier of reflective sheeting for number plates, embossers of number plates, weighbridge facilities, manufacturer of micro dots, suppliers of micro dots, and micro dot fitment centers. The micro dot is some smaller particles which are fitted into a motor vehicle, which a person or when now without a particular tool which gets used to determine how the micro dot is. This micro dot is engine number ya koloi ya gago or VIN number ya koloi ya gago. Now you find gore in terms of the koloi tse di utsuwang, some of these cars get stolen because moto o batla monyako or moto o batla gearbox mo koloing. So and then aba utswa koloi ya gago a gore a ntshe gearbox eo. Now this microdot technology will then assist maphodisa gore ga ba checka dikoloi ba kgone go identify gore by the way if it is ka di microdots, and this microdots refers to a particular car e sa le utsuwa go refilwe, and therefore it means gore gearbox or engine ele mo koloing eo ke ya a stolen motor vehicle. Mare somebody a ka se kgone go e bona without using the appropriate tools. Clause 15 amend section 3, 6 or 8A of the Act by providing that a driving license testing center may apply for the registration for the operation of a mobile facility for the purposes of testing applicants for learner's license. This specific one, it's trying to take services to the general public because you find that some of areas are hona mo e leng gore they can conduct or they can then go and do their learner's license. Now, ka mobile facility, we are able then gore re tloge ko re leng ko teng, re tle mo refill, re tlo testa but for the learner's license. So this is just to trying to improve service delivery to the general public. 16 amend section 9 of the Act to include grading of driving license testing centers in the Gazette in addition to the notice of registration. 17 amend section 11 of the Act to remove the involvement of the shareholders committee in the appointment of the Inspectorate of Driving License. 18 inserts 11 capital A in the Act to provide for the appointment of and the powers and duties of Provincial Inspectorate, whose powers and duties must be prescribed by the Minister of Transport in consultation with the relevant MEC. This is just to increase the numbers of inspectorate that we have in the country because previously inspectorate in one nationally. So this one is trying to then devolve functions to the provinces, for the provinces, the inspections, the investigations, either go the DLTC, Driving License Testing Center, or roadworthy testing station, and also go the new one which has been included in this bill, yeah, the driving school. So this inspectorate, inspector, for whether those driving schools really do comply with the standards. 19 amend section 15 of the Act which provide for the disqualification from obtaining or holding a learner's license or a driving license. It also then seeks to include a driving permit in the disqualification. Also include physical defects in the requirements for disqualification. The CEO may attach condition in respect of an issued license by a person who has to drive with the aid of glasses or an artificial limb or any other aid that will assist that person in driving a motor vehicle. 20 amend section 16 of the Act by providing that any person who is the holder of a license authorizing the driving of a motor vehicle who becomes aware that he or she is disqualified must submit that license to the CEO, who must then cancel the license card. This generally is trying to streamline a process whereby okra motho since a kry license ya gagwe kgale mole. Mara at this stage, that person is no longer capable of driving that particular motor vehicle. That person is therefore required to submit that driving license either by lowere or either by endorse gore motho be anong a sa khona go driver asa apara glass. So this is what this intention the intention of this insertion. 21 amend section 17 of the Act by providing that a person who shall willfully or negligently issue a learner's license or authorize the issuance of a learner's license, endorse or fail to endorse a learner's license, or produce or print, manufacture any document similar to a learner's license contrary to Chapter 4. Also provide that an applicant for a learner's license who makes use of any unauthorized aid during the test for a learner's license or is found in possession of an aid that may assist a person in answering a test for a learner's license shall be disqualified from reapplying for a learner's license for a period not exceeding 24 months. This obviously deals with issues here, fraudulent issuance of driving license. It then says, if ba o kry-a o ile o ngwala learner's license ya gago, o itshwaretse pampirinyana ele ya gago e nang le di-questions and answers. Ha ba ka o kry-a, and then wa kry-a le gore o molato, this bill says o tlo nna 24 months o sa apply for a new driving license because you were fraudulently trying to obtain a learner's license. 22 adds section 5 capital A in section 19 of the Act and prohibits the use of an authorized aid during the driving license test, and a guilty person, the same as the initial one, will be disqualified from obtaining a driving license if ever no ropa ga o tshwantse o ile o ngwala or o ile o ithutela go driver koloi. 23 amends section 19 of the Act by providing that an examiner for driving license shall, on receipt of an applicant for substitution of a driving license, if or she is satisfied that the existing license is valid and that the applicant is the holder thereof, issue or authorize the issuance in respect of that class to which the license exists. Furthermore, any person whose license has become invalid in terms of section 18 of the Act who requires a driving license must apply a new form for such driving license. 24 amends section 20 of the Act by providing that a driving license issued in terms of subsection 1 shall be deemed to be a driving license issued under this particular Act until a date fixed by the minister by notice in the Gazette. 25 amends section 23 of the Act and provides for circumstances under which a driving license authorizing the driving of a motor vehicle which was issued in any other country that is a contracting or is a member to the contracting state of the convention, and an international driving permit which was issued while the holder thereof was not permanently or ordinarily resident in the Republic shall be deemed to be a driving license or a driving permit. 26 amend section 25 of the Act by providing that if the holder of a learner's license or a driving license issued in terms of chapter 4 of the Act or a repealed ordinance or any other law is disqualified from holding such license, the CEO must then cancel that license if the holder of the license constitutes a source of danger to the public by driving of a motor vehicle. 27 amends section 27 of the Act in order to clarify that an amendment is made in terms of section 18(4) of the Principal Act. 28 amends section 28 of the Act to include the grading in respect of registration of instructors. 29 amends section 28 capital A of the Act to provide that any person desiring to be registered as an instructor may apply at the driving license testing center to the CEO in respect of one or more classes of motor vehicle for which a learner's license or a driving license can be obtained in terms of the prescribed conditions. 30 amends section 28 capital B of the Act, which provides for the requirement of eligibility for registration of a person as an instructor, and it also then adds a new requirement that a person may not be registered as an instructor if he or she has been convicted of any offense listed in Schedule 1 and 2 of the Criminal Procedure Act, or if such person was convicted of driving a motor vehicle under the influence of alcohol. 31 insert section 28 up until 28H to provide for the compulsory registration and grading of driving school and for the suspension and cancellation of such driving school by the MEC. As I indicated, a new in section because previously the driving schools were not required to be registered and licensed. So with regards to this incentive, we want them to start to regulate the processes with regards to driving schools and how and what should they comply with. 32 amends section 29 of the Act by providing that a document purporting to be a learner's license or a driving license issued contrary to chapter 4 of the Act on the request of the Inspectorate of Driving License Testing Center or a provincial inspectorate be declared void by the MEC upon his or her request, the holder thereof shall forthwith submit such document to the Inspectorate of Driving License Testing Centers. 33, amend section 30 of the Act by providing that no person shall use any other person's license or a driving license and present such driving license as his or her own. So this one generally then says, o ka se berekise driving license ya borro wa gago or ya ausi wa gago go drive a koloi. 34, amend section 31 of the Act by providing that no person who is the owner or operator or who is in charge or control of a motor vehicle shall employ or permit any other person to drive that vehicle on a public road unless that person is licensed to drive that motor vehicle. This generally says a taxi owner is not allowed then to give his or her motor vehicle to somebody along Horahana driving license. So we just want to make it clear the owner of the motor vehicle can then come back and use an excuse they thought a person own a driving license. 35, amend section 32 of the Act by providing that any person from driving a motor vehicle of a prescribed class on a public road, except in accordance with the conditions of a professional driving permit, which was issued to her, unless such person keeps such driving license with him or her in the vehicle. Furthermore, if the person accompanying the holder of that learner's license is an examiner for driving license. This generally came as a result of the impasse Hernan Leona with regards to foreign driving license. We wanted to do an insertion in more on regulation 116 capital A. Yeah, how do you deal with the foreign holders of the driving license? When we wanted to amend section regulation 116, or select committee empowering provisions. Therefore, we can then deal with issues of foreign license holders driving South African registered motor vehicles. So this insertion, how do we deal with foreign drivers? By our South African employers are employing them to drive South African registered motor vehicle. So with this insertion, we are then going to say, if only a South African employer, only unemployed South African drivers, you would then be required to employ South African drivers, because driving of a motor vehicle in terms of the labor legislation is not deemed to be a scarce skill. So South African companies can then say, we do not have skilled drivers in the Republic, therefore that's why I employ a foreign driver to drive my motor vehicle. So it's not deemed, or it does not fall within a category as scarce skill. Mare, because no any provision that deals specifically with that. That is why Nabakona employer the foreign driving license holders, Korba driver South African registered motor vehicle. The provision does not say a foreigner can drive in the Republic. What we want to do is to say, if a vehicle is South African registered, it must be operated by a South African issued driving license, not use a foreign driving license to operate a South African registered vehicle. They can operate or they can drive in the Republic using their foreign issued driving license. But in the case of employment, there are lots of unemployed South African drivers who must then occupy that particular space. 36 is just a technical amendment. 37 amends section 34 of the Act by adding a new subsection to provide that where a court has issued an order declaring or a convicted person who is a holder of a learner's license or permit to be disqualified from obtaining a license, the register of the clerk of the court shall notify the MEC consent of such order, and the MEC shall record such order in the register of the driving license. 38 amends section 53 of the bill and provides for the powers of an MEC to delegate his or her statutory powers to any other person, although these duties does not prevent the MEC from exercising those powers. This is to enable the MEC to say, if ever abatla somebody to go and do an inspection, MEC can then delegate that particular function to that particular institution or authority. Mare, it does not say for MEC can't themselves then exercise, if they want to, that particular power. The 89 amend section 57 of the Act to include passenger rail of South Africa in the authority to display road traffic signs and to remove road traffic signs in railway level crossing. Previously, batho ba e le hore ne ba na le right ya go beya di road traffic signs on unguarded level crossing, ne le Transnet. Mare with the recent one, or with the introduction of PRASA, e le horeng ke passenger rail, le bona ba na le infrastructure where we are then saying le bona ba provide or ba display road traffic signs on unguarded level crossings. 40 amend section 56 of the Act, which provides for the authority to disregard road traffic signs to include a person who drives an emergency vehicles in the carrying out of his or her duties, or a person during driving a motor vehicle while responding to a disaster in terms of the Disaster Management Act. This is generally to streamline a process where you find some of the authorities who has the powers to exceed the speed limit, who have the authorities to disable road traffic signs. Sometimes they disregard those road traffic signs cause na emergency, only to find that maybe they were running for some to do their errands. Akona any emergency by attending. So basically, this one is then to streamline that process to say, if that person is found to have done that, that person would then be disciplined. So aona moto eloro otla use the siren or blue lights just because ona le powers ya o berekisa the blue lights and disregard road traffic sign and exceed the speed limit. 41 of the bill amend section 60 of the Act to provide that the driver of an emergency vehicle who drives that vehicle in carrying out his or her duties or driving a vehicle while in responding to a disaster in terms of the Disaster Management Act may not exceed a speed of 20 through an intersection. This is to say, normally how bona the emergency vehicles, how about fita mo robotong, bano feta fela without reducing and making sure gore akona any other car that passes through. Now what we are saying is that how about fita mo di robotong or mo stop signing, tshwantse ba reduce at least speed is something ba feta ka sona mo, it should be above 20 kilometers per an hour. So bas ka not tloga fela ko ba tlogang ko teng ba tlama fela lo re anong ba pinyeletse fela nje aba take into account any other road users. 42 insert section 62 capital A in the Act and provides that in the event of a road incident, the emergency services shall immediately respond to an incident and render all the necessary services as prescribed. 43 amend section 76 of the Act by including the ECE regulation or model regulation in the provisions or for the incorporation of standard. This specific one deals with instances it's a dikoloi. Because if you look at the safety you find in the Republic, in terms of safety standard, they are manufactured for the international community. You find the same baki, Toyota baki or Fortuna, for Rona, maybe for London or UK or Germany in terms of safety standard. So this provision is to say, if ever Honale Yarisi, that Yaris South Africa must also then have the very same safety requirements is then operated maybe go Europe or go Germany. 44 amend section 8 of the Act by providing that any disabled person who has been exempted from any laws in accordance with the prescribed requirements and who has proof of such exemption that has been issued must be deemed to be exempted from the laws applicable in the area of jurisdiction of all local authorities in the Republic. Bothata bo ne bo le teng ke gore a disabled person, if ever ba mo file sticker gore a park mo disabled persons, ba mo file sona mo Tshwane. That sticker ne se apply fela mo Tshwane. Ga tloga mo a ya go Joburg, o kry le re yaanong ha a tshwara sticker sa Joburg. The traffic officers or law enforcement officers sta Joburg ba feletsa ba mo saeta because o displayle sticker sa Tshwane mare koloi ya gagwe e ko Joburg. So what we are trying to do is to say, if sticker sa gago ba o file sona mo Tshwane o mo refile, that sticker is applied all over the Republic. So you don't have gore ga o ya go Gauteng or go Joburg or Vereeniging o kry sticker se seng gore o se display on your windscreen. If una le sona se le mo, and then it's applied or it's acceptable across the entire Republic. 45 amend section 81 of the Act by providing for the circumstances under which a registered vehicle which does not comply with the provisions of the Act might be exempted and authorized to be operated on a public road. This generally deals with the abnormal load vehicles that comply to the standard where they can then be exempted not to comply with the prescribed standard. 46 amend section 85 of the Act by providing that an application for the issuance of a document as proof of driving license must be made to the relevant MEC or minister, and such application shall be accompanied by the full names and identity number of such applicant and an appropriate fee, if any. 47, it's just a technical amendment with regards to reference to the CEO of the Road Traffic Management Corporation. 48, substitute the heading of the sections and the arrangement of the sections. 49 provides for the short title and commencement. Ke a leboga.
Thank you very much, Ntate John. Can I note hands for comments, questions, and an engagement with the presentation? Can I note hands to the side? I have one. We're moving. This side. 9. We only have one person, ne? Brain waves are not allowed. Okay. Your platform, Dad.
Dumelang hape ke Zwela Bomacheke from go GPDSA. It's not fair to be one game sangletso, but it's okay. My questions are in terms of roadworthy. Currently at the DLTCs, they are no longer doing roadworthy, and then we have private testing stations. So I just want to know how are you monitoring those private stations, because of if we look at the road fatalities, we have a problem here. The colleagues are not roadworthy, and then those guys become private. They are monitored. So you'll never know bypasses according to the regulations or according to another method. So I just wanted to know how are you doing how are you going to do the monitoring on those private stations? The second one, the issue the traffic officers. I heard the speaker saying if they will have to impound vehicles on the road when they are not roadworthy. So my question is, the enforcement against the traffic officers on the road, because at the end of the day, we have so many vehicles that are on the road and they are not roadworthy and they are not impounded. Seldom you see cars that are impounded on our roads. Then if you can go now, sure, or if all of us we can go now, go N1, you will be shocked. O bona koloi e nngwe e nyane kana mara e laishitse morwalo mo moholo, but it's on our national roads and nobody is monitoring that. Those guys are not getting arrested and we don't know who we rahala. Same applies back to the public transport. they are not roadworthy. I don't want to mention more, but most of them, they are not roadworthy and nobody's monitoring that. Or if they are monitoring that, a resort enforcement I never saw any by impounding even today. And then issues start at the driving schools. I just want to question or actually who is training the driving schools? Because we have driving schools, and then, but we don't know what trainer as well as the PRDP. People today, Mutuatloha today, with a driver's license. Then from there, has no driver's license code 14. Then tomorrow, we apply la PDP, PRDP. Half it's a fella, that person is going to be employed by DHL or any big companies or bus companies. That person who train nekemang when I'm kamara base. As much as the taxi drivers, kamara the quantum, but train nekemang when I'm That's why we're having so much road fatalities, because at the end of the day, those people that PRDP, we are not trained for those. At the end of the day, otia koloi ona metsabatho, but we were never trained when I'm kamara koloi ya hao. So I just want to know, PRDP, like the way because what you're doing, we are going to application, where a criminal record check, then from there, that's it, you have your PRDP. So, Rebasho, this person is qualified when I'm about to Kamara base or Kamara takes. And then the other thing now, how are we training them? In terms of PRDP. And in terms of instructor, one of the qualifications or register your driving schools, it's an instructor certificate. I just want to know, in terms of ntate wakamo next door or na as ntate, Kenya ka ho ruta ngwana ka ho driver, must I have an instructor certificate now? Or in another way, the driving school because of if the guys from the driving schools grade instructor certificate, which means each and every person must have that instructor certificate, so that they are qualified. Because now Rena papa driver, and we are teaching other people to drive. But we are not sure on a right or a wrong. And again clarity, ya TRN, traffic register number, whereby I'm a foreigner and then Kenya ka ho driver ko le South Africa ka utlwa pila mola hore are they only considering for mereko now or for private use? If kile a foreigner kile mo South Africa, Kenya ko reka koloi mo South Africa, tshwantse ke re driver's license mo South Africa or korila ka yona yaka ya ko ke tlhango teng na. And then lastly, I think this one it's painful hanyane. If re kamo re bo botle kamo, most of us re tsene sekolo ba bang ga ra tsena sekolo, ba bang re na le bo ntate le bo mme ba ileng gore ba kra tšhelete sentsane ba tsofetse ba retire ko meberekong ya bona. Now my challenge is we have this thing ya learner's license. Ke utlile ba bolela ka this thing ya gore o tsamaya ka a piece of paper, then from there o fitla ka mola wa kopolla wa pass. So it's very painful because of now if o tloha o ira such a thing, then it means gore a wa bana di rules and signs tsa mo tseleng, even the controls of the vehicles. So the system thing currently, it's a computerized ones. So the public was never engaged before about the computerized system. Even the study materials for the public, I think. So I just want to know in terms of these people or moto illiterate, how are you going to go about that? Or moto learner's license, the rightful way, abale the road and lead design and lead control type vehicle.
Thank you very much. We interpretation. Thank you very much. We'll ask Ndate John to respond to those clarity-seeking questions as we are almost at the end of the program. Thank you. Ndate John.
Obrigado, Mr. Presidente. Thanks for the questions somebody was saying. And I think it's good questions it's a long partly what we're trying to do Kapili is to resolve some of the challenges which the questions were raising. Let me start with the first question in terms of the testing stations, both public and private. In terms of the testing stations, all of them, they are inspectorate. There's a national inspectorate, go inspect all roadworthy testing stations, whether they are government or a private testing station. Now, the proposed insertion establishing provincial inspectorate. It will also then assist with regards to Horehubeli inspectorate at provincial level to go and do ad hoc inspections at the testing station. So if anything, it does not matter for a private or a public, that inspectorate will then conduct inspection on all of them and make sure for a comply to the prescribed standard. In terms of the second question here, the impoundment, that is why we want to then insert a provision here, impoundment, because what currently happens in terms of the current legislation, that motor vehicle by IFA notice to discontinue. Now, notice to discontinue means discontinue now, it is then intended immediately, if it issued with notice to discontinue, it should be placed or it should be towed from that particular place. But what happens is that kolewe yatsamaya and then ailukisiwe or ayetsiwe gape gore ebe roadworthy. So by inserting a provisional impoundment, which is a new provision, previously it was not impounded. That is why then the proposed insertion here, impoundment, if law enforcement officers found really this vehicle unroadworthy and it was issued with a notice to discontinue, then they can then impound that particular motor vehicle. Now the driving school, I think somewhere in the questions that were asked, the instructors, lead instructor certificate. I think those two are linked together because the instructors gets then trained through the province. There's also a training center where instructors are supposed to be training for the instructor certificate to be able to do, to teach people how to drive. So that training center will then allow for the instructors to be trained, or that institution will provide the required training. Now the question here, PRDP, yes, it's quite correct. Administrative, where you do your fingerprints, you do your police clearance, your eye test. But when we overhaul the entire framework with regards to driving school, this is one of the aspects that is going to be looked at in terms of PRDP, to say, you can't then say, I am a professional driver without necessarily undergoing any practical training. Because for me to become a professional driver, I must have underwent some practical training in relation to the PRDP. So with the regulation of the driving school industry, those are the issues that is going to be incorporated in the whole reskilling or enhancing the driving skills. It's all South Africans, more so by long ba need a PRDP, dangerous goods, goods vehicles, public transport. Because if you look at the PRDP, dangerous goods. Currently, before somebody obtains a PRDP, dangerous goods, that person should have underwent a training or a dangerous goods training body to make sure hore ba mo ruta ka dangerous goods e loreng o tlo e transporta, and that person understand what dangerous goods is all about, what should he do if ever there's any incident or accident in relation to dangerous goods. So when we overhaul the driving school framework or the driving license system, we are then going to be looking at overhauling this process, the PRDP issuance. The question here, TRN, that's what we're trying to address with regards to TRN. Because what we have found out is that most of the people come here and they apply for a traffic register number, this TRN. Now, the purpose initially, if you are a foreigner, own ID number, you'd want to buy a car or you'd want to obtain a driving license. Ba go fa a TRN gore o kgone go etsa the services on the e-NETIS process. But it was then abused to a certain extent that foreigners will then come and obtain a TRN and then a driving license, and therefore abafetsa then get employed within the Republic of South Africa to drive South African vehicles. So what we are trying to say is that there's no problem with TRN. If ever only a foreigner over TRN, maybe what needs to happen is that restrict the TRN to people by code 80, and we restrict for PRDP. Then a person cannot then come and say, TRN or a PRDP to drive. Because we have a large number of South African or unemployed South African drivers who can still do that particular job in the Republic. So there's no way that you can then say a foreigner is more skilled than a South African, because this is part and parcel of how we then retain employment within the Republic by saying the driving of a motor vehicle is one thing that our South African or unemployed South African would require to enter in that particular space. So ensure that the TRN gets restricted to a certain extent for people for ordinary driving license, but not for a driving license along a required PRDP. The other question here, as a parent, can I then teach my daughter or son how to drive? Well, the issue here, instructor and instructor certificate, is because obviously an instructor certificate allows that instructor have a minister to say, I'm an instructor, I'm able to instruct this particular person to learn how to drive, and therefore that is why this person is behind the steering wheel. But if Elena Kiruta driver, I'm not an instructor. Now that learner is required to have complied. That learner should be having a driving license or a learner's license to a certain extent. This insertion does not in any way say you can't teach your son or child how to drive. But the only thing is that the power stone as a parent to teach your son or child how to drive would be restricted because you would then be required to have an instructor certificate. You are not an instructor, therefore, although you are able to teach your son or daughter how to drive, but to a certain extent you are not an instructor, then that person or that learner should not be on the public road. But if ever only an instructor, and then you teach somebody how to drive, you are then have all the authority to be on the road with an unskilled learner's driver that you teach that learners how to drive a motor vehicle. We are not saying you cannot teach your own son or daughter how to drive. It's only that we are streamlining that particular process to make sure that it's cleaned out. The questionnaire computerized learner's license, I think it's a problem, yes, whereby you then say we have illiterate people that can't use computers. But I think that if somebody would want to obtain a learner's license, that person would then be able to read road traffic signs and be able to understand the rules of the road. Maybe the challenge would be that person being able to use a computer. But I think that when that person goes and writes a learner's license, at the DLTC, that particular person gets taken through how to respond to that computer test that is being granted. So if ever you are not able to use a computer, there is a process where you are able then to can apply to the MEC for an oral test, where the MEC will then give you an authority to do an oral test. But in terms of the current dispensation, most of the DLTC have moved to a computerized learner's license test because we have discovered that it dealt with instances of fraud within the driving license environment. But it's something that it can be noted and then a discussion be undertaken with regards to empowering the general public with regards to how to use a computer for them to be able to write a computerized learner's license test. I submit, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. We are at the end of our program. These are inputs that are going to be fed into the national discussion for them to be put in a document that is still going to be approved by Parliament. So your comments, your views, and there's a whole lot of suggestions on the current presentation that we're talking about will be fed into. And also we'll take the other comments from the other regions that we've been and compile them into a document that will be submitted on your behalf by the committee. Two, the chair did indicate earlier on, we will come back because clearly there are other issues that you have raised that we feel as a committee we still need to engage with the community. In Tshwane, in particular, relating to Hammanskraal and surrounding, including a response through the department on the bus service that must service the community in the surrounding areas, including Hammanskraal. That time, the date, the committee will come back to you in relation to that. So for now, my task is done. I'm handing over back to the chairperson to take us forward and close the meeting on our behalf. But from my part, thank you very much for being a team and playing safely with us. Thank you very much, Chair.
No, thank you very much, and let me just say thank you very much, Member Mfikwe, for taking over the session. Thanks also to Mr. Utsating for your presentation. Earlier on, I did indicate that having listened to some of the comments that were raised by yourselves about other transport-related issues, you also said that you would want to be able to engage on a number of different transport matters that affect this area of Gauteng, this area of Tshwane, Hammanskraal, and the broader area that we're in. So I've just asked the committee section to include on our committee program when we deal with probably when we deal either with the annual report or the first quarter report of the new financial year, that we come back here. We'll come with the department. We will have our committee meeting here. We will deal with certain matters, but we will then open up so that we can raise a number of matters that you would want to raise, allow the department to respond. But when we come back, we will come back and having requested the department to respond to the issues of scholar transport, because we will ask them to also engage with the Department of Education. Also, the issue of roads. Somebody raised roads in Ward 11. Now, let me just say this, that some of these roads are municipal roads and fall under the municipality. Other roads are provincial roads. And we will ask the department to check in Ward 11 if any of those roads are provincial roads. If they are provincial roads, we will ask them to look at them. But we will also ask them to engage with the city of Tshwane on roads in Ward 11 that are in a bad condition or need to be upgraded. We will ask them to engage with the municipality. The issue of train services, we will try and bring PRASA with us that day as well to explain where they are in refurbishing these rail lines that were vandalized. So I just wanted to indicate that to yourselves. Also, we are still having further public hearings. It'll be later on in June. We haven't decided on the venue yet or the date, but that will be publicized widely. It will not be here. It will probably be in the Randburg area, Cosmo City area, where we will have our next public hearings on these bills. Indicate our community members and those who are watching on Facebook and YouTube to where they can still submit their comments. Over to you, Stembiso.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to honorable members and colleagues, as well as our stakeholders. Chair, in terms of the two emails at which...
Hold on, Stembiso. Can I ask that you just keep the noise levels down, please? Those of you who are coming in now, please come in quietly. Back to you, Stembiso.
Okay, thank you, Chair. In terms of the submissions on the three NCOP bills that have been presented before this meeting,
can those of you who are walking inside, please keep the noise levels down. There are others here who want to listen, and it's making it difficult to be able to give the email addresses where people can still write to. Please keep the noise levels down. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the oral as well as the written submissions for submission by stakeholders, we have two emails at which the submissions can be made. The two emails are smtiane@gpl.gov.za, smtiane@gpl.gov.za. The second email is lmodau@gpl.gov.za, and both these emails will be open to receive the submissions from stakeholders on the three NCOP bills. So the due date for submission at this point is up until the end of June 2023, of which is the consultative process at which the committee will be going through on the three NCOP bills. I think I will end there for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Stembiso. So if you still want to make comments, there's the email addresses. It's on the screen. even if you take a photograph of it, you can still send comments to us on what we've been discussing today. So I'd like to, firstly, let me thank all of you for being here today. Let me also say thank you to you, especially on the one bill, Economic Regulation of Transport Bill. There were lots of inputs on that. And we really want to say thank you for your comments and your inputs, because when we as a committee have finished our public hearings, we have to make recommendations as well on these bills. And as Member Mfikwe said, all the comments you've made here today, we will be factoring those into our recommendations and looking how we can include those. So we want to say thank you for your attendance. We want to say thank you for your participation. We really appreciate it. And as I've said, we will be coming back here, and we'll determine the date. We will be coming back here. So you must rest assured of that. Secondly, let me say thank you very much to all the members of the Portfolio Committee who've been here. Our role here was not to talk. Our role here was to listen and to hear what stakeholders and community members have been saying. I think the officials that were presenting have had to leave. They've gone to other public hearings. Mr. Bisa, please pass our thanks to them for having been here to present. Thanks also to the provincial department. I know that the team have been making notes as well on some of the matters that have been raised outside of the bills, and I know you will take those up with the HOD. We will take them up with the MEC. As I've said to yourselves, as I started by thanking all of you for being here, let me also say thank and for helping to make sure that everybody's been able to fully understand and listen to what was being discussed today. So thank you very much to yourselves, to the sign language interpreters who've been there in front of the camera. Thank you very much to yourselves as well. To the team that set up all the equipment earlier this morning, thank you so much for setting it up and for making sure that we had screens and that this meeting could take place in the manner which has taken place as well. So thank you to all of you. I know that coffee was served earlier, just a short while ago. There's lunch that will be served as well. So thank you to the catering team for the catering. And thank you to the committee team, led by Stembiso, for all your work in making sure that this meeting takes place. So we want to wish you a pleasant afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day. If you're traveling by car, please travel safely. Make sure you arrive alive. Obey the rules of the road. And don't speed, because speed kills and causes accidents. So on that note, thank you very much. And this committee meeting or public hearing is now adjourned. We will see you in probably the next, probably about 2 months from here or a month from now. As soon as we can get back here, we'll see you back here and we'll let you know in advance of that date. Thank you very much.